Game begin.
Here with Bill and Andy. We just started driving our way out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And it's not bumpy at all.
Yeah.
These are beautifully paved roads they got out here. The budget for the roads is outstanding.
Yeah, the budget. I feel like Cambridge should have some city budget given the presence of certain large institutions, but like the Dante Alighieri Society. But in any case, tell me about the new people you met and the pleasant interactions you had.
So this was not only my first time, it was my first like really big tournament, and also my first time traveling to play Magic. It's not something I've ever done before, and I don't know.
You're like the F&M crusher, but you're leaving.
F&M crusher. Thanks for saying that. I'm like the F&M 2-1. You can count on me to go 2-1.
Yeah, but you're like leaving small town New York, and then you're heading out to battle with the big guns.
Oh yeah, just the small pond of New York, little tiny New York.
Yeah. It's a little suburban, country mouse situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of like a foreign concept of like, I'm going to take off work to go play Magic. You know, I just, because I normally just do like little weeklies here and there, which obviously I've been enjoying Magic a lot and I'm playing a lot of Magic the past few years.
There's a Pauper League that you're a stone cold killer in.
Not this season. I'm getting stone cold killed. I'm still locked in for top 8 so far, but last season I was crushing it in first. I think I 3-0'd like 4 weeks in a row, or someone had done the math, and I would like 3-0'd 40% of the times that I played. So I had a lot of luck last season. I was also playing the Brood Scale deck, which it got banned. I played a lot of different decks, but a lot of those 3-0s were on Brood Scale, and that deck was
the big tournament.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we have just a Pauper.
A Pauper 4K is
super
coming
Pauper,
up. Yeah, that should be really exciting.
4Ks?
Yeah, supposedly.
I'm getting into Pauper now. There's 128 Pauper players in New York?
Hopefully there will be that many joining. I mean, there's at least 40 people that have come, at least 42 unique players that have played in the league so far, which started in April, this season's league. So there's at least that many who could potentially play in New York. Yeah, Mangu, come through.
Yeah, Mangu, if you're listening.
It qualifies you for like the New York Championship thing.
Yeah, right. As does the Sacred Torch Showdown.
Yeah, Sacred Torch Showdown. Yeah, but sorry, I keep interrupting you. Just tell us who is the nicest person in person. All of them.
Nicest person in person.
Tie for first.
Oh man. I'm just going to go through. I mean, like, I don't think I had a lot of time to talk with BK until this trip, and Rich, like we've, shared space, but not really talked before. It's good hanging out with SWB as always.
And that's our Rich, our Rich Busey, not to be confused with pre-modern champion
Rich Shea. No, I
old school.
Yep. Reigning.
Yes. I still haven't met Rich Shea really, but Hoyp, I've seen his content over the years and like known him in name, of course.
Yeah.
The whole Duress crew, I've listened to the Hardcast, shout out to them. Also, they ran an amazing event. If I was going to travel for any tournament, like this was a really good one.
Yeah, it truly was something special. And I think there have been like grumblings that there's a vibe shift, and maybe the Lobstercon is getting closer to the kind of thing I love, and maybe farther away from things that other people love. But I would hope not. I mean, I don't see any reason why there really isn't something for everyone here. Whether you're like a heavy drinker, heavy partier, or like a heavy grinder, heavy deck enjoyer, gameplay enjoyer, Like, I think Lobstercon still delivers 100% on vibes and 100% on over-the-table experience.
Yeah, here's how the vibes were at pretty, like, I would say 90% of my matches. It's like, opponent and I sit down, maybe there's a brief introduction, and not a lot beyond that. We're completely silent during the gameplay, just both of us locked in, and like just like killer mode, right? And then as soon as the match is done, hey, where are you from? Like, it's you know, it was, which I like. I you know, I like getting competitive about games, but not in a way where like, you know, I'm not salty. You know, we all get a little salty when like things don't work out for us, but not salty at the person across from me, and surely not giving a person across from me any kind of like negative vibes. You know, that's not cool. So like, you know, being competitive, but still being like, you know, I still root for my opponents. If they beat me, then hell yeah, good luck in the next round. You know, take it down.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank God for opponent match win breakers.
Oh yeah, even more reason for them to win.
Yeah, giving us
help me out.
giving us like the nicest thing to say after a match was just like, good luck in the rest of the tournament. Like, you know, just like a total gimme, like easy thing, almost kind of trite at this point, but still, you know, a nice thing to say.
You also got to give them some advice sometimes so that they can win their next matches.
Oh yeah, just a little coaching.
Yeah. Well, Ty gave me some good advice. I don't want to play against him.
Yeah, teach you how to navigate the elves matchup a little better.
No, it was a thing that I've known. It's a thing I know about.
Yeah,
but I just like wasn't thinking about it at the time.
He's like a little advice from the Pro Tour, or the rarefied air of the Pro Tour.
So he played. I was playing Tide Control. He was playing elves. He turned to played a Call of the Herd, and then I went Furnace, get rid of your Call of the Herd. And that kind of slowed down his game plan, and it was pretty clear he had another call in his hand. So he was trying to set up call flashback all at once.
Right, because you cannot Furnace in between call resolving and, of course, their ability to cast the second call.
Right, and he said that, or he did that, and then he told me afterwards. So what I had he had that set up, and I had a powder keg in my hand, so I was like, okay, I'm not really worried about this. But a thing I missed was that he was saying I could have animated my Furnace. With the Furnace on the stack countered the top half of the call and then eaten the call.
Yeah, this is a classic surgical extraction Past in Flames trick with Past in Flames on the stack. If you let it resolve, you cannot surgical the Past in Flames, or rather, if you counter it, you cannot surgical the Past in Flames. But Past in Flames is like Call of the Herd; it has flashback.
Yeah, a card with flashback.
Yeah, a card with flashback. So if a card with flashback is on the stack, and you want to counter the front half and exile the flashback half, you have to put something on the stack, counter it, let your counter resolve with sorcery speed. Okay, all the copies. This is like one of the coolest stack. I mean, it's really heads up stack interaction in Magic. This one really blew up on Twitter, but yeah, like it was Past in Flames and surgical extraction and a fetch land, so you can fetch in response to the flashback spell or
the front half.
Yeah, put anything on the stack, cast your counter spell, resolve your counter spell, then cast or use your graveyard exile effect. Because something's on the stack, your opponent, of course, can't try to sneak their sorcery speed flashback spell onto the stack from the graveyard. So yeah, I love that interaction.
I hope to remember that next time I'm in that situation. But
it
doesn't come up often for me.
It's so specific, like sorcery speed when you have the counter spell available, but man, when it hits, it feels good. Any other standout interactions or fun new people you met?
I mean, it was just good. You know, there's so many like username. I think like
the username thing.
Yeah, we all have our actual name and then like our gamer chosen name or whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like with the username. So
Puni Destroyer 69. It's like,
that's mine.
Yeah.
So you gotta like you introduce yourself to someone and they're like, oh, my name is, and you're like. And they're like, well, what are you on Discord? Yeah, and then that's how they know if they know you or not. You know,
well, it was nice. They have on the
name tags
lanyards.
This year,
you could put your Discord name.
Yeah, my lanyard was not generated or something. Like
Didn't
I
have
don't.
2 exclamation points.
No,
They don't
for-
know how to process exclamation points.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big problem. You know, having alternative characters like that in your name makes it difficult. So, I had to just kind of fill in some stuff. But yeah, it would have been cool to have. I saw that some people had their like, you know, blue sky handles and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of want to highlight that we are just leaving Cambridge after like a Sunday afternoon hang with a bunch of the Dress Crew boys.
And a mix of other people. We got Scott from LA. We got Flippy. We got Bryson from North Carolina.
Oh yeah, cool to meet Flippy too. I mean, these are all players that, again, because I've never traveled to a tournament. Like if they haven't come to a New York tournament, I just haven't met them. And and it just because I don't travel doesn't mean I'm not plugged into the content stream and that I'm not, you know, paying attention to who's getting results. Like, because that's half the fun of Magic is looking at lists and looking at results, right?
Right.
So, and you know, I watch the streams and all that. So I know of these players, just have not met them until this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. And yeah, I just kind of want to highlight, like, I think each year I get to know the Dress Crew boys a little better. And then, you know, it's actually kind of funny. The podcast, the streams, the content, it's kind of like a one-way mirror where like I see the content creator, but they don't see me. So, you know, like me, like I like getting to know Dress Crew more from Hardcast and then kind of having this sort of weird, honestly, parasocial relationship, but really upgrading that parasocial relationship to a social relationship, like a nice and healthy one, you know, is really excellent. And then doing the same thing with Spike Colony listeners, like having people, you know, come up, talk about the podcast, talk about their favorite parts, talk about how much they love when I spend, you know, a 30-minute detour through poker theory. Multiple.
It was
people.
only 30 minutes?
Yeah, 30 minutes plus, you know. But yeah, just multiple people just like nodding vehemently in agreement how much they enjoy poker, and just like one Luis Neiman just being like, I kind of tuned out for that part. I'm like, well, Luis, you are welcome to tune out, because it sounds like people are loving the Ace King suited pocket pair discourse. But yeah, and just like, you know, hearing people, like, I don't know, it's like I love hearing people's relationship with the podcast, and you know, so that was all nice and all like pleasant interactions, right? None of that like weird, nothing weird, you know, because like you kind of fear that when you kind of put yourself out there in public. It's
for sure.
Some person's just going to be a complete, you know, it's completely inappropriate or crazy or something, you know. And of course, Spike Colony listeners are the best podcast listeners around. And yeah, so universally super nice. And I think I have a photo. Unfortunately, I should get a name, but one of the coolest gifts, of course, is when anybody ever hits me with an unglued basic. I love those. And also somebody coming through and hitting Mike up with a Rush Sigged lightning bolt.
Oh, wow.
Which was an extremely kind gift. So shout out, you know who you are. I'm sorry I don't have your name off the top of my head, but that's you know, extremely generous. And you know, once we have Mike back on the cast, I'm sure he'll get a chance to thank you as well. So that was super cool. Some of the Spike Soldier action, the homies from the Discord, the Spike Soldier tier, you know, kind of making it super bringing through some Spike Soldiers that I could write. Spike Colony gives its worst 3-hour plus long podcast to its strongest soldiers. That was like a fun little gag, and I love a little, I just like, you know, just loved damaging cards. So, so that was, you know, that was kind of like the, that was super fun. You know, what else? Before we dive into like tournaments and games and recaps, just kind of I want to stick with the vibe. I mean, like, I don't know. It's like, I mean, it's been said kind of often that Lobstercon is kind of like a family reunion vibe. But, you know, with Lobstercon growing every year, it's kind of turning into like half of it's the family reunion and half of it is just kind of like, I don't know, freshman orientation, like a bunch of like
Yeah, that was me. I was definitely one of the freshmen this year, but I was welcomed very, very warmly. So I was grateful for that.
Yeah. So crew stuff was, I mean, it's like, and the merch, the stickers, just like so many cool things.
I was saying that like I love that how many like pre-modern is all about the crews, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just like our nerdy version of like the Warriors.
Yeah.
Like everyone has like their crew name and their like little logo and like, I mean, next year I'm coming in with like the clown mask and roller skates,
Yeah, definitely. And the ephemera is just like the stickers and stamped cards. God, I want to shout out, I think it's Alex from the Rochester Royals, but I hope I
Who was organizing the side event?
Yeah. Was that Alex?
Alex.
The Unchained, yeah.
Oh, he also, I think, did the
Consolation, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, they were doing upstairs, I think. Yeah. They were holding that down.
Secondary TO, this guy told me how he, the process for one of the most beautiful stamps that I saw, the Rochester Royals.
Oh, yeah, it was kind of like layered.
It was absolutely layered. So first we go in with a little stamp, then we fill in with white, and then we hit it with another stamp, and then we fill in with gold. You'll have to try to search around Discord for that Royal stamp, but extremely labor intensive stamp. And my guy handed out like, probably upwards of 60 to 80 of these anarchists stamped with this, as well as the top 8 pricing for Unchained. So shout out to SWB, of course, who took home the PM Unchained belt that's unban 1 card for your deck and duke it out. SWB was like, I do not have time to figure out this necro balance brew situation, so I'm just adding Force of Will to Dreadnought. A lot of people had the same idea, but only one came home with the belt.
It was a mirror match in the finals, right?
Yeah. Finals of the mirror match. Sometimes the simplest answer is the easiest answer is the best one.
Yeah.
And Force of Will.
The easiest answer is BSWB.
Yeah, well, that's definitely
true.
That's definitely one of them.
Do you think we can beat Force Dreadnought with either balance or necro, or do you have an idea for how to beat this deck in Unchained? Like if Unchained started to evolve a meta, what would be your like anti-blue deck?
I'm gonna leave that to Andy.
Combo black deck.
Combo black deck, with like lots of discard. So it is necro then.
Well, it doesn't need to be necro. Doesn't need to be the combo piece. I don't know if it's. Sorry, what I'm saying is I don't know if necro is the best combo piece.
Right.
Like
getting necro force definitely.
Can SWB's deck ever beat a contamination? Like, I don't even think that's the best use of Entomb. I'm just.
Yeah. You're thinking, but that's the first place that you went.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not, but it does help. Force of Will does in many ways kind of help with that, but thankfully you got
therapy and duress. I think duress and therapy is something with that, and just a better combo deck than all the combo decks that currently exist in pre-modern. I don't know what the best iteration of that combo deck is.
Yeah, like the best Unchained combo deck that has duress therapy, which is like really good at like beating the force check and then like getting the thing on. This is classic, right? Because like I used to love playing Black-Red Reanimator in Legacy and just going for those turn 1, therapy naming Force of Will or ritual therapy naming Force of Will, Entomb, whatever. So
yeah, Reanimate itself in this format, like Reanimator stuff in this format, doesn't seem good enough of just getting a big creature in play. But maybe there is some like shallow grave,
right.
Or like
in Unchained, like Entomb Reanimator Chroma is just like not going to cut it, but it will cut it against exactly Dreadnought a lot of the time. So there is some consideration for that, but interesting stuff. I mean, look, I wouldn't. A lot of people are kind of reading into the result, thinking that it's like, oh, Dreadnought is the being the best deck in like unban 1 card format, and pre-modern is like a signifier, but you have to remember like Dreadnought has, years and years of cook behind it, whereas balance and necro just has never been built around in this format because we've never had it. So we're talking, like thousands of hours of development versus like, oh, there's this fun little side event happening. Like, what can you do with balance? Like, no testing, no like whatever, no idea what the meta is going to be. And so Force of Will is just such a good catch-all answer if people are trying to cast these big important spells. But, you know, if you know it's a Force of Will meta, you have like the agency to do some stuff and pull some stuff out of the hat. So, you know, maybe we'll see more Unchained events in the future, and the Unchained meta will evolve from just adding strip mine to whatever, or adding Force of Will to whatever. And like, we start really seeing like, you know, cause balance has got it. I mean, come on, balance. Are you kidding me? Mind Twist, Geddon? Like,
well, you can't Mind Twist get it down. Oh, you're just saying, sorry, the card is Mind Twisting.
Yeah, the card is Mind Twist and get, like, you know, like, I don't think Mind Twist is that exciting in Unchained.
But I don't know, that's a great way to be Dreadnought too, right?
Well, I mean, I think that Mike Arnold won his own Unchained event by playing just Demonic Consultation Suicide Black, which, you know, Consult for Hatred was in his range. And you know, SWB has the 1999 extended battle box that has basically exactly that deck, like Dothies, 2/2s, negators, consult, rituals, hatreds. And that's what Mike Arnold played in Unchained, and he won his own double elimination or pod situation event, webcam event. So, you know, you can do a lot of different things in Unchained, and I think Mark Arnold's deck would definitely mop up Dreadnought. You know, black beat down deck with Consult. It's just like, I think that'll do it. Yeah, again, fun little detour through Unchained. But yeah, you know, Bill, you are the winner of the the highest monetary value prize of the weekend, which was you know, a chase card, Guru Swamp. You know, we go into this tournament. It's going to be
so rare that 0 swamps were played in the top.
Yeah. It's the unplayable.
It's so expensive.
It is.
People did not want to put any swamp.
I kind of
afford to put any swamps in their deck.
We have to kind of ask like why they wouldn't make a PM playable card the top prize for the Wednesday event or the Thursday event. But, yeah, they went with, you know, basically banned in PM, basic swamp. But it was a Guru. It was a nice addition, nice art. But yeah, like, you know, before I pass the mic off to you, Bill, I just want to share my salt of like, I go to the tournament and I'm like playing to try to get knocked out so I can like leave and hang, or like just, you know, like it's the first night in, I want to kind of like decompress, think about the next day. Because it's basically a single elimination tournament. It's 60 people, 4 rounds, cut to top 4. So you have to 6-0 to win this tournament. And I'm just kind of like, oh, whatever. If I win, that's nice. I get like a Guru Swamp. That's probably like a, you know, $150, maybe $200 card, whatever. And then, you know, but if I lose, I got to go home and I get to hang out with my friends. And that's like about like $200 of vibes. You know, not that we can put a price on vibes. And so yeah, I was like, whatever. And then so I was like playing my Grotog deck. It was actually the only deck that I had sleeved up that was like a legal pre-modern deck, because all my other decks were in pieces. Or I had the cards I needed for them on order that I was going to get on Friday. And then I was like building it. I was like, oh, let's just take the red hate out of my sideboard. Like, who plays red as like just who plays red at just
all the
like
non-podcast listeners?
Yeah, exactly.
The people who don't listen to Spike Colony, they're on red. They have not heard the red slander that's been going on.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. But regardless, I was just like, yeah, what's the big deal if I lose to red? I go home and then that's a good outcome. And then so I win round 1, team kill against DEL, of course.
Ouch.
And then round 2, you know, my opponent hits me with that Mountain Jackal Pup. I'm like, well, looks like I'm going home. That's not a big deal. And then I get home and Bill is doing quite well in the tournament. And I'm like, well, Bill's going to take home that Guru Swamp. I wonder how much that is. So pull up trusty TCG Player or TOAmagic.com, you know, whatever your vendor is of choice. And we're like, well, $650 for like a HP, MP, you know, kind of type of situation. I was like, like, you're telling me that this was the tournament that I should have locked in for, and I could have like taken a chill for the actual Lobstercon, but yeah, no. But yeah, Bill, tell us about what happened.
Yeah, so first I just want to say the real prize is the friends we made along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
No. The real prize is the belt.
They're right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but we always fight for the belt.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on. The real
So
prize
what you're
is the
saying
belt.
is you're going to stamp the Guru Swamp.
Of course, yeah. I already have, actually. I'm going to put it up for the next meetup where we're fighting. So DEL, let me know, or he goes, no, Del. It's Del, right? Not DEL, right? So,
Well, it's David. Yeah,
it's Dave. But I always look at it as DEL when I look at it on Discord.
Well, it's his initials.
initials.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's like, oh, everyone calls me Del.
Oh, okay. So we'll call him.
So
Deli boy.
Del let me know about this event during the 1K the Sunday before Lobstercon that we had, the Andy Levine 1K.
Yeah.
GP Andy Levine.
Yes. He sent me the link for it. I clicked the link. It's already like 0 slots available. I was like, all right, well, because I didn't know what the plan was for when we get in on Thursday. Like Louise and I were coming through. I was gonna ride with Louise, and so come in and we're like, oh, well, let's just go and see if a slot opens up. So lo and behold, at least 2 spots open, or 1 slot opened up, and then SWB knew that there was going to be another slot open
Because he knew that BK was canceling.
because BK was going to be out, right? So I kind of last minute sneak in, which I was happy about because, I was just here to game basically. I'm ready to, I haven't gotten to play a lot of pre-modern in the past couple months. So I was like, this will be cool just to and I only brought 1 deck. I just brought Red Green Oath. And I was like, I'll just jam this all weekend. And worst case scenario is I'm fucking sick of the deck by the end of the weekend. But that is not what happened. I come into it was cool to come into an event with some heads that I knew from the community, like people that I knew of, but no one knows me.
Yeah. So you're you're silent assassin.
Yeah, I'm like an unknown, right? I can go through kind of the basic rounds. Like round 1,
Anything that stands out. Yeah, we don't have to,
Yeah,
we don't have
I'm
to
not
be
gonna do play by play for the
Yeah,
whole
you don't
thing.
have to be like, I oathed them, GG.
Yeah. Round 1 was against Blue Black Stifle Knot, which I haven't seen the Blue Black Stifle Knot around much, but I think that that was the second place from last year, right?
Yep.
But I thought that deck looked really strong.
That's such a classic. Everyone's like, what about Blue Black? What about Blue Black? It's just man, what about Blue Black? Just do it. Just do it, man.
It's
Stop
cool.
talking and do it.
It's fucking
and
cool.
there are doers out there getting spanked by Bill.
Well, the problem against my deck is that Psychotalk dies to a Red Blast.
Yeah.
And also, I can just keep you off half the cards in your hand by fucking up your black sources, and that's pretty much how the game went.
Yep.
And also, you have wasteland targets
Right.
that were not...
Mono blue boards out.
Yeah. So, I got there in 3 in that game. So this is where, knowing the community, but also being an unknown myself, really worked out for me. So, round 2, paired into Nick Mayo on Elves. Now... Unless
one-way mirror, baby.
it's just I know there's an Elves player, and I already have a good matchup against Elves generally, but I know okay, all I got to do is Malta Oath and hope that, or if I see a hand with Pyroclasm, I just keep that a snap keep,
Right. Because it is dicey. If your Oath gets naturalized,
exactly,
Elves can just or they stick the survival and can kind of load up resources, and you don't have sphere resistance. They can just do 20 damage in a turn, or you get the Oath. They play some Elves, they pass the turn, you Oath up a giant Terravore,
and then he just sits there, he blocks 1 dude, and you get ran over. Yeah.
Exactly. They untap. They untap with the Priest of Titania, and that's all they need sometimes. So
Yeah. So I think I just landed turn 1 Oath. He just didn't play into it, hoping to draw a naturalize, and I was just able to sphere and then do all the stuff, right? And the next game I also just had now I have Earthquake and then 3 Pyroclasm. So I also played next round against Carl from Impulse Crew, I think.
Yeah, the Binghamton, New York Impulse Crew. That's Crazy Carl on Discord.
He was on
Vintage Champion, yeah.
Champion, wow, yeah. Okay. He was on Hermit Feb, which everything is a wasteland target.
Yep.
I think I might have had a sphere in play at one point, and a lot of thermokarsting happening. I pretty sure in one of the games I was able to ping a City of Brass a lot with Rashadenport.
Textbook. Yeah.
So then I'm pretty much locked for top 4, and this is
3 rounds.
that's no. Oh, I'm forgetting Tron. I played against Tron.
Yeah,
this was weirdly
with your land destruction deck. Yeah.
you think this was weirdly one of the more difficult matches I had, because I thought, okay, I just got to keep them off Tron. Everything's a wasteland target. I just blow up a bunch of shit. But what kept happening is they would just save their swords for like anything I tried to get in with.
Yeah.
And then it started to be like, oh, I'm attacking with man lands, or creature lands, but they're getting more mana than me. And if they just cycle Decree of Justice, this whole game goes to shit real quick.
Right.
You know? Luckily, they were digging for it and just did not see the Decree. But I was kind of when I first saw the Tron land get played, I was like, nice.
Yeah.
And then
like 10 turns later, like, what are we still doing here? Like,
yeah, I was like, I'm supposed to win. I'm supposed to have won this. Like, this is like, I can't lose the Tron. That's gonna be like a tough like
entitlement's a bitch.
Yeah. But yeah, you can lose your good matchup.
Yeah.
And I did not want to do that. Luckily, I did not. But that was literally only because Decree was not seen in game 2. Game 1, I was able to lock up pretty quickly.
Do your thing, yeah.
Yeah. So this is when I'm like locked for top 4, and I'm like, okay, this is going well. And let me look at the value of these prizes, because I play pre-modern, but the format that I've played the most and play the most frequently is Pauper, and I mostly know of the Guru lands as a pun that Pauper players are like, oh yeah, I have my Pauper deck, but I'm going to get all Guru lands for it. Like, I'm just like, okay, it's like an expensive.
Yeah, it's like the only way to make a Pauper deck like really expensive.
Yeah.
Actually, Simon and I were talking about what would be the most expensive Pauper deck, so you could like most expensive versions of cards to make like a really expensive Pauper deck. Not counting the basic lands, because all the basic lands you just throw. Guru Island's gonna like beat everything. And, yeah, so it's got to be some blue deck, because you can run alpha counter spells, and those are like $600.
No, that's an interesting point.
Is that more expensive than foil 7th? Question mark.
Much more.
Okay.
Well, what about how much is Alpha Dark Ritual?
Alpha Dark Ritual is a common.
Oh, right.
Counter spells. So Dark Ritual is like 150, I think.
Okay.
And then you're also running like blue blasts potentially. Those are expensive. You could run the foil brainstorms. Like, there's a lot of foil cards in blue.
Yeah.
That you could run that are like very expensive. But anyway, back to.
All right. So
you're checking the fire.
If you play against Andy and Pauper, you got to be worried about mono blue. So that's what we're learning here. So yeah, I'm checking the prices, and I was like, oh shit, because I thought they were probably like $100, $200 max. So I was surprised to see the number next to the dollar sign that these were going for on TCG. So I was like, okay, we're gaming. I got paired against
this. I mean, just to scroll back, like,
yeah,
here's what you can. The other prizes were foil Parallax Wave, foil Karmic Guide, and foil Sylvan Safekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
All very hot foils. And this was just such a unique event, because honestly, like, there's events that give out Mox Diamond, and of course the quarterlies are popping off with, all the support they get from that store owner, the Massachusetts ones. So
that's what they do the Mox Diamond tournament?
Well, they've been doing Gaia's Cradle now.
Oh, wow.
So you've been, because they're 100 plus people tournaments.
Not in that store. It's a different store.
Oh, not at Pandemonium, right?
Okay.
That's ELDs. There's like multiple stores in Massachusetts. They're kind of hard to keep track of, but yeah, I think ELDs is the one doing the quarterlies and handing out guys' cradles to the quarterly winners, which is much deserved. But to just do the first ever tournament that we know of at Pandemonium Games that's in pre-modern, just being like, we want to support pre-modern in Boston, and just be like, yeah, Guru Swamp. It's like that just
sicko prize, yeah.
That just rules.
So top 4. Now I'm paired against Billy from Duress Crew. Again, a person I know in name, and I know that they're a Terrageddon player. I'm concerned about that. I don't love my Terrageddon matchup, but he was on Corned Beef Hash. I got smushed game 1 and then just mulled to a hand with Oath in games 2 and 3 and got there in those. But yeah, I mean, it's like the one of them I went to 5, and it's like, it's just literally like Mox Diamond, Land, Oath, and some other junky card. And it's like, hope this doesn't get naturalized. So luckily it did not, and I got there in that. And then last round was against Mono Blue 12-12, and I honestly can't remember how the first game went. I think there were, if I won it, there had to have been spheres involved. But game 2, again, this is like really late at this point. We're at like past midnight, and a lot of people like traveled to get there during that day. So I think a lot of people are a little bit tired. There's only like 4 people left in the store at this point. My opponent's name was Eric.
Samurai Fun Online.
Yes. Oh, do you know this player?
Yeah, we have a little bit of interaction, and I think we have some like interaction in the Magic Online leagues.
Oh, great! Yeah, he was a great player, great guy.
Yeah.
But
Blue Dreadnought.
Yeah, in game 2, I just got lucky. He was on a mold of 6 and kept a 1-lander with the only cantrip he had was Opt. I think he had like a stacked hand besides that, and it was like, I think it was like if he got the other island, he was off to the races. Otherwise, he was like, you go to 5, and then it could get maybe messy. I don't know.
Yeah, just because the matchup background is that the Tide Plan is to. Did you know if he had Tide Plan?
I'm pretty sure he had Tide Plan.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he did too. And what typically happens is Tide Plan means you got to hit your land drops, and it's tricky because like if you're on 6 and you got that 1-lander, but you have a lot of cantrips, that like if you need a lot of lands, you can't mulligan, because like mulliganing puts you essentially one card further away from like those 5, 6, 7 land drops you need to go for like Tide combo to like sort of pants the Oath Ponza player.
Yeah, so I when I saw him, he opted. I played turn 1, whatever, just a tap fan, I think, at Treetop Village, and then when I see him turn 2 pass with just the 1 blue up, and then I get to like throw down library and like all this other crap like over the next couple turns, it was like, and one sphere came down, obviously.
Yeah, your heart rate just, kind of goes up, but that also goes down because you're like, I got this now.
Well, yeah, when I play sphere and it doesn't get annulled, and I'm like, okay, so how much was that swamp worth again? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I was
you're buying your partner a juicer.
Yeah, yeah, I was hyped to take it down, and it was also cool. Like I said, like, so this tournament in terms of player count, highest player count event I've ever played. So to just come in and take it down, now it's the highest player count event I've ever won. Yeah. And that's just the start of the weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm like, damn, this like taking off work and coming out here kind of worked out pretty good. So yeah, very good introduction to traveling for Magic. I was quite excited with the result.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because we're talking like hundreds of people who are coming out who, obviously, are going to struggle through the weekend, myself included. So it's kind of like you just hit the jackpot on your first pull of the slot machine.
Yeah. And 1 belt in the bag for New York, which was exciting, and, going into the rest of the weekend. Yeah. And then, I come home and everyone's like, yo, so it's, yeah, great feeling. Super excited about it.
Awesome, extremely hype. And so you were playing Red Green Oath Ponza, pretty much stock, right? Nothing fancy.
Oh yeah, so I fucked around and like
I did the Gibbons thing.
I tried the Gibbons thing. With SWB we had like a little testing session, and because I got him way in my head, like I can't beat Mono Blue 12-12 with this deck anymore, like, and I can't even play this deck. I was trying other decks for a bit. I was trying Terrageddon. I tried all kinds of other stuff. And it just like, I was like, let me come back to Red. I saw one of I think it was a Duress Crew event where this is the one that Rakdos Goblins won, but second place was a Red Green Oath that was on 4 Hidden Gibbons.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I actually think this is an interesting innovation. I should test this out. So I put together that build. It's very similar to what I'd already been running, except for the sideboard plan was like very much like a fuck mono blue type of sideboard plan. And lo and behold, it's pretty good against Dreadnought. Pretty much like all the games that we played post sideboard, it was like if I get turn 1 or 2 Hidden Givens, I'm normally running away with that game.
Yeah, honestly, I was just kind of like on my way out the door, and you had like started with 2 Givens. You're like, well, this feels pretty great. I'm like, that's not really fair. Like, you're just not going to have 2 Givens in your opening 7 to 10 all that often. Like, you can't count on that. Honestly, you don't get it in your opening 7, at a particularly high rate.
Yeah, and so I hum and hawed about it. Even on the ride to the Thursday event, I just had the list that I ended up going back to the Call of the Herd list just because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to face on Thursday.
Yeah, it's not just going to be a mono Dreadnought field.
Yeah, like some people are gonna. It's like their first day and they're not gonna want to play the deck they're playing in the main event. I was like, I'm not. Obviously I did run into 2 12-12 decks, but I was like, I didn't think that was going to be the norm, right? So I was like, let me just run it with 3 Call of the Herds, like the way I normally run it, and it went great. And then after that tournament, I was sort of like thinking about, if you have Hidden Givens and they just slam the 12-12 down and you're sitting there with your embarrassing 4-4, like, it's only good in like the cantrip moments. It's not good in the I just jam and deal with it. Whereas Oath is good in those moments sometimes. And it's like weird because like you can't keep Oath in your deck when you have Hidden Givens, because they can just like, they can trigger Hidden Givens while you just basically can't play them 2 at the same time, because like they can trigger Oath on your end step, or they can trigger Hidden Givens on your end step, then get an Oath trigger on their turn, and then and then, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So they can get they can use their Oath against you, and you can't really make the argument for a deck like Red Green Oath, like you'll just cast the Oath or cast the Givens, because you have to really leverage every single card you draw, because your only card advantage comes from Sylvan Library. So if you like are just like basically pitching a card in your hand by like casting either Oath or Givens and not being able to cast either, like that's a pretty significant piece of material that you're giving up.
Yeah, so once I thought about it in those terms, and then I was also thinking like, it's just, I think I like Hidden Givens into Burn too, but not a ton else. Like maybe
I will add that Hidden Givens is pretty fun against Burn, where it typically wouldn't be, because Burn would pivot to like just using all their creature or sorcery damage. Well, it's actually tricky because if you build the Burn deck like I do, Bolt and Incinerate actually become the only instance that they like are interested in casting.
Yeah, you're more permanent heavy, like with the Vortex,
Ball
and
Lightning, Seal of Fire,
Curse Scroll,
of course, and all the creatures. But you can, of course, invalidate the creatures by using Oath. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I actually think I haven't seen really any strong evidence that that Hidden Givens should be coming in against Burn. And when you're thinking about Hidden Givens versus Call the Herd, I think Call the Herd is pretty difficult to for Burn, because it just puts pressure on them. It blocks their entire creature base, and it's just kind of like if you power it out with Mox Diamond, then you're also in a decent position.
Yeah. So after like playing a bit in an event like that, and just like really kind of theory crafting a little bit more based on the situations that I was seeing, where like Oath does put a lot of pressure on 12-12, because like if they swing in while you have like a dumb little 5/5 Terravore and you live, then next Terravore is going to be insane.
Right.
And then now they really can't swing in, then you eventually get to live the dream of like, I'm attacking with this thing, and you have to block with your 12-12 or you are dead.
Yeah.
Like that does happen. So I think that happens more than I have this 4/4 that you don't deal with before you put a 12-12 on the board, and it gets there. I just don't see it. Like,
the only way to stop a bad guy with the 12-12 is a good guy with the 24-24.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, after that I was like, I'm just running it back like this the whole weekend. And one of the things that I wasn't thinking about in terms of Hidden Gibbons, but like really came up is I played the Oath Mirror 3 times on Friday. And I only played against green-white, which is a bad matchup for me because they're basically my deck, except for they don't have useless cards.
Yep. Yeah. So for the background, right? If you're playing green-red versus green-red, each player has 4 Terravors. And so each player can only remove a Terravor with their own Terravor, which means that each player has 0 Terravors at the end of all the Oath triggers. Each player has the same number of Wastelands, Rich and Imported. So manlands are either going to bounce off each other or they're just going to be wastelanded and imported to irrelevance. So the green-red mirror is decided by whose last Terravor that gets oathed out is lower in their deck than the next person. So like if all your Terravors are closer to the top and they're just like trading around for your opponent's Terravors, like, you know, your opponent's just going to get decked because everyone's resources are exactly the same. But green-white has Sword Splashers. So,
and Ray of Revelation, which they can hit your Oath and your Sylvan Library or whatever else they want to do. Like,
they can navigate,
or they can just hold up the other one for the next Sylvan Library. And often, like, the way you win the matchup is having Sylvan Library online for longer.
Yeah, you kind of have to try to like, get the maximum, like kind of just open a window, right? So it's like you guys are so even on resources, but if somebody like kind of starts drawing a little bit slower than the next person, and you've got like heat and you're still casting spells, then you might be able to open up a window where you can just like get enough damage in before your opponent sort of catches up.
Yeah, it's really it's a matchup where who's on the play matters a lot. Like very, like it's so important to be on the play.
Because it's like Stone Rain you before you get a chance to get to your own Stone Rain mana.
Exactly. And you could even start with like the turn 1 Sphere, and then that puts them so far behind, especially if you can get a Wasteland in. Like, and it's a matchup that's like so much about just like grappling like miserably for like 6 turns, and then you just whoever gets that little edge during that grapple just slowly dunks the other person into the earth until they have nothing that they can do anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like a suffocating thing where it's just like you get these extra attacks in and they're forced to like make bad blocks or they're forced to act defensively in. So like each exchange, you get 3 damage. Like maybe they trade a Stone Rain for one of manland or a Wasteland for your manland. But like it's not a bad exchange. Like it's an even exchange for you to go animate Mistress Factory, they port. But if you go like animate Mistress Factory, they port it, and then you tap that Mistress Factory and you animate another Mistress Factory, like then you're using your mana more efficiently than they are.
Yeah, it's just a weird matchup, and I played against it 3 times. I won 2 out of the 3, which
you played against it 3 times.
Yeah,
that's crazy because we kind of felt like the deck had fallen off in the meta.
Not in my bracket, it didn't. It was alive and well. And every time I saw that it was green-white, I was like, fuck. But like I said, I got there 2 out of 3 times, which is better than I would imagine if I had to just like look at it on paper, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I think I also have good fundamentals in the match. So
yeah, maybe your opponent sort of like couldn't get the plan together, and because you had sharpened your instincts in the matchup, you would kind of like come in with a little bit of a preparation edge, which we love to see in our colony.
Yeah, I mean one of the things that I think I was like getting better at playing the deck as the days went on too, which was also like, you know, again when I play Pauper a lot, I'm switching decks like every week when I play Pauper a lot, so I don't often grind just one deck for a very long time. And, you know, I know that Oath doesn't immediately seem like the deepest deck in the format, but there were things that I was doing going into... Here's another thing. I haven't played a lot of big tournaments like this, so I'm also not as experienced playing into a blind opponent in paper. Like, obviously, if you play on, like, Arena or MTGO, you don't know what your opponent's on. Sorry, take this thing here. Clear my throat. You don't always know what your opponent's on online, But when I play a small event in paper, like after round 1, you can kind of poke around and see.
Just
or
some scouting. Yeah.
Yeah, you can scout, or like you know what the locals normally play, so you know kind of what hands to keep. Also, red green are the type of deck that you keep a sphere hand or you keep a oath hand.
Yep.
Those are 2 very different hands for very different matchups.
Mulligan to 6, and you can choose one.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also like the funny, like you try to like get a vibe of like, okay, is my opponent like control person or are they a creature person?
Yeah,
and like
do you think Impulse Crew is playing lots of Impulse? Duress Crew is playing a lot of Duress. The guy with the Mog Fanatic playmat, completely just out of left field with Mono Blue Dreadnought, that kind of thing. And somebody actually did like roll up in a Mog Fanatic playmat, and they had a completely different deck. And then a standard by, like an observer, like asked me, it's like, oh, were you like surprised, because of the Mog Fanatic playmat? I was like, oh, honestly, I didn't even notice the playmat.
Yeah.
But, they had it on their mind that they were gonna punk some people with that playmat.
Hey, get your punks in where you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I respect it.
What would you do? Would you double level? Would you just go completely neutral, like, black playmat? Or would you try to play some games and just like have your natural order playmat?
Okay, here's the thing is we play against SWB. SWB always runs the hater blocker goblin token as like a cover for his deck.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to peek at the deck box, you see goblin token, and you're gonna think, oh, I'm playing against goblins, and I'm gonna keep a hand that's good against goblins. So I rocked So I rocked the goblin token hater blocker. I don't know if I got any real edge on it over the weekend. I can't say for sure.
You just have that in the deck box on top of your sideboard for people who don't know. Yeah.
Exactly, because I was keeping just like Phyrexian Furnace or Tormod's Crypt as a top card, because it could be anything. It's my most neutral card. But then I you see SWB with some tech, I'm like, hey, it's pretty good.
I was doing that.
I'm playing Basic Mountain on my Storm Island playmat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to also rock the elephant token in exactly the same way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just like have the elephant token in my Dreadnought deck box or something like that.
Those poor elephants.
Never getting cast. Always getting powder kegged and dominated in this new pre-modern.
Yeah. What else? So one of the things I was doing, like in the blind, because I was running into so many Oath decks, is rather than put out my color source first, I would just put out like Wasteland as my turn 1 play.
Yeah.
And that then like I can end a turn Wasteland their thing if I want to, or I can play my green source or something if I don't have a basic forest in hand. Not something that ever really occurred to me until I started getting so many rounds in a row. It's like it's fun to like be able. I think maybe some people have the same feeling like when you play like an F&M, which is mostly what I play, and you're like, oh, I wish I could just run back, like play another event right now, right afterwards, because I feel like I learned something and I want to just like execute on it right away and kind of just like lock it in my mind, or like see if that's the right thing.
Yeah,
and playing in such a
second layer of paint.
Exactly. And playing in a long event, or like playing in back-to-back long events, really, I think, sharpened me a little bit on some of those things.
Yeah, repetition and those detail things. I mean, this is what we're talking about. What does reps mean? Like, repetition is so important. And, that kind of became the theme of the weekend, as you kind of saw a lot of, there's so many storylines with this Lobstercon. You've got sort of like archetype masters, a bunch of combo decks in the top 8, a bunch of sort of like well-cooked decks that kind of came from the minds of people who were really focused on those kinds of things. And you have to imagine that they had the right kind of practice and preparation. With the Enchantress deck, I heard that
a lot of Enchantress players.
I think his name Chris Hall. I talked to some of his friends. I think actually the deal is your finals opponent, Samurai Fun, Eric, was hamming up Chris Hall, who was basically this angry hermit god, and he just like played the deck, and he's like never done anything other than play Angry Hermit. We had the Psychotog God, Ken Takahama on, these 2 Devourer players, 5-color, and I think we confirmed that the other one was just blue-red. But we'll see once the top 8 decks get published. Like, you can't just, have Devourer in your arsenal. You need to devote yourself to the Devourer blade if you want to be really into that deck, because the times I've played it, sometimes it kind of feels simple, but like I wasn't winning with it. So these players kind of discovered a different way to play and take that deck.
I want to give a shout out to Chris Hall. That he was my baddest beats of the whole weekend. Again, a pretty good weekend for me. My final record for the whole weekend is 18-5. So very happy with those results. In the main event, I think this is like the 5-1 bracket.
I mean, your heartbreak in the main event, 17th on Breakers.
Yeah, 17th on Breakers in the main event. 33rd on Breakers in the vanilla
Oh my
event.
god, you just bubbled
Yeah,
every
I am like
milestone.
Yes, I'm King Bubble this weekend.
No, you just living with odd numbers. Like,
Yeah.
why are even numbers have so much favoritism?
They're
with
so
all
privileged.
of us? Yeah.
And it's like, it's funny because we're like, as Magic players, we're like, oh, I fucking bubbled out of top 32. I bubbled out of top 17. I'm like, oh no. But it's also like,
Are you ever like, I bubbled out of top 1? Like, you just lose the finals, you're like, oh, I bubbled out.
But it's like we're so obsessed with like factors of 8. Like, but it's like I finished top 20 in a 289 person event. Like,
Heck yeah.
I'm pretty happy with it,
Yeah.
So anyway, Chris Hall, got to give a shout out because worst beats of the whole weekend. Game 2, again, this is Red Green Oath versus Angry Hermit. I go turn 1, Treetop Village, pass. He goes turn 1, Gemstone Mine, tap for black, Duress. Duress looks at my dirtily hand of 2 Thermocars and a Sylvan Library. I just didn't want to mulligan super hard. I figured that maybe, I could.
You've got a 2, you've got a 3. I mean, I keep those hands.
It's not an amazing hand. I probably should have mulliganed. It's not a hand that like blows the matchup out or anything, but whatever. I didn't get the strongest 7. He takes Sylvan Library, Lotus Petal, tap for blue, Dreadnought, or tap for whatever color, Dreadnought, tap for blue, Vision Charm, pass. And I'm like,
nice.
Yeah, I'll look at the top card, but I don't know.
Checkmate.
Yeah, that was pretty instant. I was like, I don't think I have a lot of counterplay to what just happened, regardless of my mulligan decision. So, shout out to him for getting top 8. Yeah, deck is cool. I want to play that deck sometime.
Yeah, super cool stuff. We got Bryson of the Spy Colony doing some damage with his cataclysmic Wayfarer Tog Esper deck. Super cool deck that he's been sharing around and kind of owning, playing in the online streets.
Oh, I heard about this
I
one.
played against him in the consolation bracket.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, in the consolation event. He's my first round opponent. Really cool deck. Yeah, Meddling Mages, Exalted Angels, a Glory, which is really cool. You can discard that to Psychotog, protect your Psychotog. Also,
This should be a tireless tribe deck, I feel like.
AKs, kind of nice with Psychotog too, because you can exile those when your opponent has AKs, because we were in AK Mirror.
Yeah.
Super, super fun match. I won it in like a super close 3 games. The last game ended up, he conceded at some point because he was like, I think you got all of the power out of, like, all the ways I could win are gone.
Answered.
And I also got through all of my answers as well. All of my kegs were gone.
Yeah, no guy's
All
blessings splashed into Bryson's deck.
I checked my phone after the match, before we submit the results after the match, and I see a message from you, Lanny. I was like, it was just like, oh yeah, like come to the booth. Like we're gonna do the next round when it starts. So I turned to him and I was like, okay, you got this 2-0. I'm gonna drop.
Yeah.
And then he ended up, he lost his win in for first.
Yeah.
Or not win in, he lost his kind of first place
Win in
match.
first because of the Swiss +1 structure.
But he still ended up top 8 in the consolation with that deck. It was a really cool deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, Crushers with the Crusher deck. So you've got Justin Provençal, who has been sort of devoting his entire world to the Mono Blue Dreadnought Blade, putting up awesome local results, but not really having had a chance to make a dent in the sort of nationwide stage. And he didn't play in last Lobstercon that I knew of, and he just goes and he just makes a hella run, second place. I mean, this is a guy who, a lot of people wouldn't even know should be on their fantasy draft team. I knew because I was paying, because this guy's in the Discord. He's talking I could see a little bit of myself in him when I was kind of really diving in and trying to rally up deck specialists together and try to crack the code on a deck. He's just been talking up a storm about how to build this Mono Blue Dreadnought deck, and his preparation and his take on it paid off with the AK main deck, 3 gush. I would never cut that 4th gush from the deck. He just does it. He's I'm going to make up for it with accumulated knowledge. Playing a fantastic game 1 against Rich, understanding his role in the matchup, and really in kind of a freshman class like Lobstercon story, a newer player against one of the more been around the block names in the finals, kind of taking me back to Itai versus Selden. The 23 Lobstercon finals. So that was super exciting, and one of the many stories to kind of emerge from this con. And I don't know, I kind of think that I've been supportive of kind of the jokes about deck specialists not being able to do anything else. And I was oh, haha, you just don't, you're kind of stuck. But I think that this is an event that really speaks to deck specialist stuff, or just if you're going to be a deck specialist, be a Dreadnought deck specialist.
Sure.
I will say that I have never talked up Enchantress deck specialists. That's kind of classically been one of those decks where I'm people are really going down with the ship on Enchantress, I hope it's not putting anyone too much on blast, but I felt like the Enchantress players were really frustrated about the popularity of Parallax Tide, and Rich said, well, carpet of flowers.
Nice.
This is what I'm going to do. Exploration kind of playing an interesting role here too, and sort of flipping the paradigm of the matchup now. Not necessarily saying Rich and his sort of team's take on Enchantress is going to crush all the Tide decks, but he showed off on camera multiple times that Enchantress could absolutely break apart what the Tide decks and the Dreadnought Tide decks can do. So, and he's not, he was the replenish guy up until sort of this weekend.
I thought that he was going to be on replenish for this tournament.
Yeah, he did pivot from Friday to Saturday. However, I guess you'll find out in Rich's interview in an upcoming podcast, likely hosted by the Direct Crew, what the exact story is. But I definitely think it is something along the lines of played replenish on Friday, wasn't feeling it, pulled out Enchantress for Saturday, and I think it's possible. It doesn't feel like a 11th hour thing. I think it was more of an option 1, option 2 thing.
He did a lot of work on it. I know him and Packer were working on the deck some together. They both talked through and were on. I know that they were on a 2-card main deck difference, I believe. Rich was up swords, and
Rich had
minus a swords plus a Sylvan.
Yeah,
and there's some other maybe small difference. But I know that the two of them had worked on the Enchantress deck together before the tournament, and they both ended up topping it.
Yeah, love to see it. And yeah, I gotta say, very interesting and excellent read. Is it a read? Like, what's super interesting is that Packer and Rich switching from Replenish to Enchantress meant that two of some of the most talented Replenish players were no longer there to prey on the Enchantress players. Not to mention the Elves players, but they did figure out something for the Elves matchup. I'm told with inside info that Rich got lots of testing done against Elves in which he was getting spanked. But when, the rubber meets the road, Rich was able to pull out wins against Elves, when it really mattered. So Enchantress kind of an interesting new look. Like, this deck looks like the way that him and Packer, and I think they had one other collaborator. I'm sure he'll get a shout out to everybody sort of involved in the innovations. I know that Chris Toller was also a big part of this sort of turbo for exploration for Sarah Sanctum, or I'm told that Packer added the fourth Sanctum maybe, just like, it's kind of a small innovation, but it's an innovation nonetheless, because like we are maxing out Miri's Guile and Exploration, two of the most sort of negatively talked about enchantments in that deck, like myself included. Like, I'm just like, Miri's Guile, of course, I don't have to repeat how much I said I don't like that card. And Exploration is, just as bad as Mox Diamond, but once the pieces all fit together, Exploration, Lair Lands, Sarah Sanctum, going for like these super mega mana boosts, ended up making a huge difference in matchups that would be hard for a Replenish, just allowing it to reach the final stage of the game much faster and execute crazy turns, like where you cast all your win cons at the same time and can overpower blue counterspells.
I think Miri's got to look. I mean, first of all, my deck sucks against Replenish. Or not Replenish, Enchantress.
Yeah.
Sucks against Replenish too, maybe in the right situation. But
let me stop you right there. So back in the day, we were saying that Enchantress was really fearing Red Green Oath, largely because, this is the deck with Wild Growth in it.
Let me tell you two things right now.
Yeah.
I got two words for you. Karmic Justice.
Yeah.
Fucking ruins my life. Sacred Ground, I'll just disenchant, though I have to waste a disenchant on it.
None of them were running Karmic Justice.
They did have, that's a funny thing.
But when I play against Enchantress, they normally have Karmic Justice, and justice for who is all I have to ask.
I don't think you can con your way into people accepting the Ponza deck as the good guy.
Oh no! First of all, I think Enchantress is super sweet. I'd probably play it myself if it didn't cost so much. I say this is a person who's playing a Mox Diamond deck, but like
you grinded for those. For those, yeah. They had Sacred Ground, a couple Sacred Grounds on the sideboard,
which is pretty solid into like Terrageddon
and Kaya's Blessing on the sideboard. Just excellent kind of stuff. Looks like we wanted to take the alternate exit. You wanted the rest stop?
Yep.
Oh, you're allowed to say that out loud.
Okay, yeah, no, I just don't want to interrupt the pod.
Yeah, no worries. We're super realistic. Last year, or the very first episode of Spike Colony was broken up by rest stop, so we are very happy to hit them.
We don't have to break it up. I can just pass the mic on to Andy, and y'all can keep going.
Oh yeah, that's no problem.
I can use the rest stop.
Yeah. We're gonna hit, I think if the rest stop has any caffeine sources, I'm gonna.
All right, so you heard it here. We're taking the mics into the bathroom with us. We're gonna stay. We're gonna stand lined up at the urinals, talking about pre-modern, and you're gonna get that content live.
Yeah, right. But hey, not bad. Get a little I think I got all the yawns out of me, but then I kind of hit a few more. I have a few more yawns, but I'm glad it's bright out. But in any case, the Enchantress deck kind of showing and catching people by surprise. I think that sort of good matchup complacency might have caught up to some replenished players and some elves players and maybe some goblins players.
Did you see any replenished players? I didn't see any.
I
in the
did
room.
actually. So Rich played a win in against I think her name was Claire. I missed the last name, but they were playing replenished, and I walked over and I was like, well, Rich had a good run, but it ends here. And then
I'm sure a lot of people have said that in their lifetime, only to be proven entirely wrong.
Yeah, then I checked the standings, and Rich is in the top 8, winning the win-in over Claire. I'm sure we'll hear about that battle when Rich gives the play-by-play. But just really, really awesome stuff. Winning a bad matchup is quite
amazing
the
feeling.
quite
Amazing
the
feeling. As a person who took it down, there's White Green Oath. I walked away from those matchups feeling very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're pulling into the rest stop parking lot to park, so
this is the end of chapter 1.
Yeah, chapter 1 of X.
Tune in after the commercial break.
Don't forget to head over to ko-fi.com/Spike Colony.
Yeah.
While you're waiting. Just kidding. It's going to be like a time jump that goes immediately. But that's showbiz, baby. Rest stop update. Rolled to McDonald's. I know I need caffeine. So I'm going to hit a McCafe iced coffee.
Oh, is it recording?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're back, and we're always recording. We never stop. Like I said, it was live at the urinal. Yeah. That's where I dropped my tourney report at the home.
Yeah. So, trying to figure out. I do not know the play at McDonald's, and having a McDonald's play is pretty important because they're everywhere, obviously. And so Andy did not have any tech to suggest. We all know that you have to go for the fries. That's kind of a slam dunk. Andy was suggesting the chicken strips, unavailable, and the last nuggie I had was unplayable.
Yeah.
And so I decided, and Bill's vegan, so McDonald's has
no plays.
Yeah, nothing to offer him. He just doesn't know how to pilot.
It's not my format.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely not.
Fries are vegan, right? Or do they use
the fries are probably
vegan. Yeah, they're vegan, but
and sunflower oil or whatever.
Yeah, whatever the thing is, and and so I just decided to take it back to the American Classic and hit up the QPC. I don't eat cheese though, so QP no C, and I have to say, with much surprise, that the QPC is an absolute hit. The coffee tastes rancid. It is a horrible coffee, but kind of the worse the coffee is, the better it'll keep you up. So I'm looking forward to the energy I get from this bad boy as I choke it down over the course of the 2 hour and 57 minute remaining ETA.
It's going to be a long podcast, y'all. Buckle up.
It was already, our last episode was already a long podcast.
Yeah.
It was, SWB and I were actually in extremely high spirits after recording that last podcast, because we shut off the podcast and we looked down at our ETA and we have 30 minutes left in the drive, and it felt like we had time skipped forward.
Nice.
Because the conversation was so invigorating and enjoyable. So shout out to our last guest, SWB, who we will have back on, hopefully, to talk us through some Unchained and a little bit of aggro parfait in sort of the belt episode. Unchained belt episode. I don't know. SWB is always fun to have on. Pretty level-headed guy, and really enjoyed our chat. And I heard that some people actually listened to that episode on their way to Lobstercon.
Yeah, Luis and I did.
Yeah, which was kind of what it was designed for. So hopefully by killing our commute, we were able to help kill your commute. And just part of it was just a fun thing, and really one of the many fun things you can do to engage with Lobstercon.
So SWB and I were sharing a room at the house, at the Lobstercon house, and
the Spike Colony.
Yes, Spike Colony Lobstercon house. what a lot of people maybe don't know, the listeners maybe don't know, is SWB, he basically spends like the first hour of the day meditating, and then the rest of the day whooping everyone's ass at Magic. It's like that's how it starts, you know. Yeah, it's like I'm like, man, he's just going through this plays in there. He's
charging up his chi, man. He's gaining special.
You know, I feel like I did learn some stuff from him over this weekend, just because like the way he really paces himself throughout the whole weekend. Like in the Thursday tournament, he knew he didn't want to play late, so he went 2-0 drop, which I'm thankful for because it gave me the opportunity to go for it. Right. Then Unchained, he comes home with the belt, right? And then I think he
starts 5-1.
Starts 5-1 on Saturday. I think his final record for the weekend.
He might start 6-1.
6-1? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So then he played a win in it?
Yeah.
That match was because that's right, because he was playing a win in it.
It's draw.
Yeah. Win and draw, as long as the pairings worked out for him. And then Roland played the win and so there's 9-rounder in round 8. SLVB has a virtual win and Roland in round 9 has an actual win in. Roland fighting back from a 0-1-1 start to take it all the way, almost
with one deck.
That would be Super Grow Oath. Super Growth.
All right, there we go.
Mystic Enforcer Oath.
Yeah.
We got a name.
Oath sideboard. People have been flooding my inbox, telling me that calling it Grow a Mystic Enforcer game is sort of like Super Grow Erasure, because the Super Grow deck OG contained Mystic Enforcer. I didn't even fact check this, but I'm told this is the deal. And so yeah, shout out to the nostalgia homies. We'll just call it Super Grow. I'm okay with Super Grow. Some people will still call it game. We can just kind of have a little double name situation that doesn't hurt anybody in a way that actually matters. So Super Grow Oath. Roland hits me with a message. He's like, I kind of had this idea. I like your Super Grow deck. I want to add Oath transformational sideboard because they'll never expect it out of the Grow deck to turn into an Oath deck. If it's you can kind of have a Chroma Neshoba, a Shard Phoenix, have a little Gaia's Blessing. So, honestly, me being me, I just kind of asked some questions that, the meme with the Muscle Doge and the Baby Doge? I was the Muscle Doge, and it kind of felt like Roland was the Baby Doge. And I was like, Muscle Doge says creature decks are not a problem. Certain creature decks can be a struggle. Clerics.
Elves?
No, not elves. Yeah.
Well, then is that what he lost to?
Yeah, but we'll get
okay,
into that.
sure.
So typically not elves. Listen, if you pull up data.durestcrew.com, it will show that Grotog is unfavored versus elves, but I do not find that to be the case. Grotog is very good at locating engineered play, and it is very good at answering survival of the fittest. And Korean Dryad growing to a large enough size to block sideboard call to herd tokens can be good. Now, granted, they can find the line. They can bust it open and kind of take it down, but they have to fight against a lot of sideboard resistance. If you have access to Fire Ice, of course, there's just a lot of bad news. Just Elves isn't, a deck with great removal, and as a result, Korean Dryad, Mystic Enforcer once it turns on, and also has flying, right? And Meddling Mage naming Survival cause a lot of problems for the Elves deck. And Goblins, similar with that, so I would rather play against Elves than Goblins as the Grow deck, just because Goblins has some explosive potential, but sort of same deal, you can kind of rule the battlefield. And so I was just like, what do you need Oath for? Clerics would be tough, but Mystic Enforcer was kind of meant to help the Clerics matchup. And White Weenie is tough, but, I don't really want to like White Weenie Flippy. There's just or the Flippy decks, which granted is not a White Weenie deck so much as it is a control deck. Just don't expect to see that often. So at the end of the day, I was just like, Muscle Doge. I'm the grow master. Dismiss. But I told Roland, I was like, funny you should suggest this because you should just talk to Andy Levine about this, because Andy was basically saying like, hey, I'm going to do this. He didn't ask me for permission, right? He was just like, I'm going to do an oath sideboard in a grow deck. And I was like,
I didn't meet him. Yeah.
Yep. And I said the equivalent of you do you. Now, it was so funny because I hit him with the you do you, and I've been, of course, pestering Dr. David Raska sort of all week or all weekend with my various last minute ideas for Dreadnought decks that culminated in me hitting up. And I was just like, what about sideboard Masticore for the creature matchups? And he just responded, you do you.
Yeah.
And
that's your muscle Doge.
Yeah, he muscle doged me. I was baby Doge. And I'm a medium-sized Doge. I'm a Dreadnought. I'm a Dreadnought sicko. I'm no Justin Provençal, as it turns out.
But when Raska is in play, you're baby Doge, right?
I mean,
agree or disagree?
Raska, yeah. Like if we're talking about scaling, right?
Yeah. That's we're talking about a big scale here.
Yeah. He's like
no one's diminishing you by calling
Doge.
you baby Doge next to a muscle Doge Raska.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we had
muscle Doge Raska should be his like AIM username.
Yeah, muscle Doge Raska. Yeah. The other analogy we were making all weekend was like, we were like, oh man, like, who's gonna be the Goblin King? Is it James Smits or Michael Hoyt, as they played in the Friday event finals? And we were just like, well, what's a Goblin King to a Goblin God? And so I would say that goblin beings in a mob. What's a Goblin Man to a Goblin King? I would say that I'm a Goblin King.
But the real question is, what's a Goblin King to a Goblin Goon?
Oh, you got me on that one. But yeah, so you got the Justin Provençals and the Brian Seldins, and of course many others. Those are the Goblin Gods, and I'm talking, of course, about Shrimp Gods. But what's a god to a non-believer? And David Raska was a non-believer in Masticore sideboard. But of course, yeah, no.
Similarly to how Lanny Long was a
non-believer
to
in the oath sideboard. I am a non-believer. Yeah, what's a god to a non-believer? Turns out Roland's the god, and I'm the non-believer. But we're mixing metaphors here. But yeah, Seldin is like definitely the biggest Doge on the block, or Raska is the biggest Doge on the block.
What did Seldin play this weekend?
Seldin played.
Oh, sorry, you go through the other events.
Yeah, tournament 1, he played corned beef hash, right?
Whoa, really?
Right?
Was that Thursday or Friday?
I thought it was Friday, but
I don't know if he played on Thursday. Yeah, he did play. He did play Survival to Geddon, I believe, in whatever other event he played in.
Survival T-Geds.
That deck is cool.
Or seen at the tables with Survival T-Geds, and then follows it up with Landstill, which he called. He was needling me. He said he called it F-. I'll have to check the tape. I said that Mike Flores' 23andMe deck was F-. Landstill, well, it's unfair, right? Like, I can't just, like, assign it an F- and, like, wait for Seldin to, like, obviously
win next year's Lobstercon. Yeah.
Well, no, he went 5-3, so now if I call it F-, because, like...
I went 3-3 drop.
Or 3-3 drop, something of the sort.
Yeah.
So he goes 3-3 drop. So I get to call it an F-, like, pretty comfortably, but I need to, like, put my skin on the line.
You got away with it this year, yeah.
Yeah, like, I can't say it after the dice had fell. I have to say it before, right? Because Seldin told me he was playing Landstill. I was like, oh, shoot, I'm upgrading it from F-. Like, I'm not going to call it F- to Seldin. But
you're just going to call it F?
Was, he talked so much about Fairy Conclave being awful. This year he did run one Fairy Conclave.
Yeah.
Probably cost him.
It's true.
Yeah. That's the difference, folks.
But anyways, I wanted to actually kind of talk out a little bit of the what about this thing that happens with deck design, and kind of dive into it, because I think ultimately, you have you have these decisions, right, which sometimes deck design begs the question. I'll talk about some common examples, right? The most common, what about this for Grotog is, what about Dreadnought combo in Grotog? They're like, you're just a worse Dreadnought deck. Why don't you become a Dreadnought deck? And that is like a question that has one of those like weird curves where it's just like, is Grotog different than a Dreadnought deck? Like on paper, they don't look that different, but when you play them, you do find out that they are quite different. I've played both decks, and I've always treated Dreadnought as a combo deck, and I have always thought that Grotog was closer to a control deck than really any other kind of deck. And you can also dive in and be like...
You did try playing Dreadnought once.
I did, but that deck was actually what did I call it? I called it Wug Surf and Turf because the formula of Dr. Surf and Turf was 2 Mishra's Factories, Dreadnought combo, land destruction in the sideboard, mass land destruction in the sideboard. So I had a theory that if you swapped out Mishra's Factory for Nimble Mongoose, your pivot plan to like only kill people with non-dreadnoughts would be even better. And you could keep splashing colors and add melee mage to the sideboard. But you could just go Factory for Mongoose. That's pretty interesting. You can go Parallax Tide for Armageddon in the sideboard. That's pretty interesting. And then now you have all these splash colors. You can just go completely crazy. But everybody's screaming at their radio right now. It's like, Lanny, the mana base, the Gush. You don't have enough islands for Gush. And you're like, absolutely right. The mana doesn't work. And so, you always think you can like borrow things from other decks. And that's actually kind of a good way to learn why it works for those decks and not for your idea. I figured that out. I was just like, you can have Mox Diamond and you can have Dreadnought, but man, you really don't want to play Mox Diamond in a Dreadnought list because you already play essentially these sort of like 12 pieces of air in Dreadnought, or like however you want to look at it, right? So the Dreadnought itself is like the material, and then like the Stifle or Vision Charm has kind of like airy tendencies where they just sit in your hand and they don't do anything. They kind of make your hand one card smaller, right? And if you have that and you have Mox Diamond, then your hand on average is like 2 cards smaller. And then that's just too much. Like you have practically nothing. By the time you get your Dreadnought on the battlefield, like you're on fumes. So okay, so like maybe let's just make up for all that with like big draw spells, Factor Fiction, AK, Deep Analysis, like something to try to recoup all this card disadvantage. And then just like at that point, is the juice worth the squeeze? Now you've got like Mox Diamond, but it's basically just fixing. But you're basically taking the upside of a card like Accumulated Knowledge and using it to fix your mana. It's just chaos, right? And so I tried Chromatic Sphere in that deck, and Chromatic Sphere just doesn't quite solve that problem. It kind of gets close, and I'm still kind of tinkering. But anyways, I tried, and so I kind of came to that conclusion. And so I don't want to like discourage people from asking tough questions like, how can you push a deck further? Because that curiosity opens up a lot of doors. I'm sure that happened with the Enchantress Cabal. That's the kind of question that first started with 10 Arms, basically going like, what about 1 Mirror's Guile, 2 Mirror's Guile, 3 Mirror's Guile, 4 Mirror's Guile, Ricochet, 4 Mirror's Guile, what about 4 Mirror's Guile and a Sylvan Library? What about 3 Opalescence? What about 3 Parallax Wave? What about 0 Words of Wilding, Sacred Mesa, Elephant Grass, a bunch of other cards that was considered for the Enchantress list? Like, what about all these things? Trying it. And then some open-ended questions are bad. There's like, oh, what about if I played Call the Herd you know, in any deck that adds green, right? Half the time it's great, or like 80% of the time it's great, but there's some decks that just like red green goblins maybe doesn't, Call the Herd doesn't work there. I haven't tried it, but I'd guess that it doesn't. And it's so tricky because I think that the Muscle Doge sometimes has blinders on when it comes to what about questions, because they know the deck almost too well, but the questions that get opened up about like what about an Oath sideboard and Grotog, like, you know, for me it was just easy to dismiss. The counter question was just like, well, I don't need this or want this. But you shouldn't let good enough be the enemy of perfect, actually. You should not let something that starts off as like pretty powerful, you know, like, oh, Grotog against creature decks, pretty powerful. Like, what if Oath means you smash those creature decks and more? That there's some potential out there that you've left on the table. I experienced this a little bit this weekend with a technical play. I made a good play when I could have made a great play. And this comes up in chess. We actually talked about it on the write up. We were like, oh, blunders and inaccuracies. But also there's good plays and there's brilliant plays, right? And so I had a game against Dancing Ghoul, but I thought it was just a buried Ghoul deck initially. Ghoul combo, Shallow Grave, Sutured Ghoul, exiling double Crows and Cloud Scraper for a 26/26 attacker. And so, pretty interesting stuff. I win the roll. I'm playing my Bant Survival deck with a bunch of Meddling Mages. I play a Forest and a Birds of Paradise. I pass the turn. My opponent goes Black Source Ritual, Buried Alive for Ghoul, Scraper, Scraper. I untap with my Meddling Mage, or my hand with my Meddling Mage, and I'm like, okay, I've got a good play. I'm just going to cast Meddling Mage, naming Shallow Grave. It's going to cut out 4 of my opponent's outs here. And my opponent passed to them, and he just plays Ancient Tomb and Corpse Dance.
Oh my god.
And I just get completely wrecked. And I look down at my hand, and I have Wall of Roots and Wall of Blossoms in my hand. And I only took 1 damage from my lands. So I could have put 8 toughness onto the battlefield so that no matter if my opponent had Shallow Grave or Corpse Dance, he would only be able to deal 19 damage to me. It would cost me a couple cards. That's not ideal, but it would cost my opponent everything too. As I later found out, he was playing Dancing Ghoul, which doesn't get to run 4 Cloud Scrapers to sort of re-Ghoul combo me, but it does have access to Burning Wish for Fireball, which had the potential.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Burning Wish for Fireball is part of like the mana kill.
Over mana, you
Yeah.
just make a bunch of mana, yeah.
I don't want to do too much Dance Academy talk because it's a little too complicated, but it's a combo deck with Burning Wish, and
Check out the stream. Carl does some coverage on it.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely check that out. And so I kind of think that is the same mentality you should take into deck building, because I think you can look at that with Dr. Surf and Turf. You've got, oh, this is a good deck. Mono Blue Dreadnought, pretty good deck. Like, you go, you just kind of mulligan, you find Dreadnought. Lots of games where you have Dreadnought within turns 1 and 6, and then sometimes you have like these games where you get these late Dreadnoughts together because your opponent's slow, like whatever. And then I'm sure Raska's not a big chatter, right? But if he was a chatter, I can imagine him just being like, oh, like, what about Mishra's Factory? And people just being like, oh, like, you know, that's not an island, stuff like that. What about Flash of Insight? Flash of Insight number 2 or number 3 is like, oh, you know, it costs so much mana. Like, you know, you don't want something that costs so much mana. And the muscle doges kind of, their muscles start to atrophy because they're not really getting creative. They're not sort of flexing. They're not really asking hard questions. And then the baby doges start growing up, and and finding like, you know, something, not settling for good enough. And, you know, it's not to say that I think that Grotog with Oath sideboard is the truth. I'm just saying that I kind of initially thought that, you know, my knowledge of the deck was sort of enough to inform the decision making. And I think that a lot of people with their deck that they know quite well think that they can answer questions without really trying to see what those questions imply, like some kind of the more the deeper nuances of, you know, the questions being asked, and kind of chasing ideas down to their logical conclusions, because you really can't solve everything in your head sometimes. And I kind of feel that I kind of felt that with you know, with my red green Ponza list, right, that has smokestack, where I'm just kind of like, what about wild growth? Like, people have really just, or like Mox Diamond infatuation, you know.
But here's the thing about wild growth: Rashad for it.
That's true.
It really shuts that off. And like Rashad and Port, which like
Yeah,
Goblins is running, and
a quick pause right there. Wild growth is not for the mirror, right? It's like, I wouldn't put wild growth or smokestack in my deck if I knew that other people were going to.
But you know what's good in the mirror? Mox Diamond.
Well,
and good into a lot of things. I mean, like,
well,
having a turn one play against Dreadnought to drop a sphere is, if they have no like foil, that game is over. And if they spend all those cards for foil, like, that's one card they spent 3 on. You know, it's like, I think I disagree about Mox Diamond versus Wild Growth, though. I was interested in pursuing the idea, like I thought about it a lot. Like, you had interesting points, but I think where I've landed, especially after this weekend, is like, definitely not. Like, all of the game states that I saw, I can't imagine one where I prefer to have Wild Growth over Mox Diamond.
Yeah,
you didn't
I mean,
play
I would.
against any powder keg decks.
Yeah, I mean, I would.
That's true.
I would caveat that, you know, basically, like, the thing I'm trying to not encounter is absolutely like powder keg, or just somebody.
Strong stop.
Or somebody going after Mox Diamond, right? Multiple, like, so the first Mox Diamond tends to be okay, but if somebody goes after Mox Diamond with their naturalized effects, God forbid a powder keg, God forbid a goblin tinkerer, like on the flip side, we had Ian on Hardcast just being like, my favorite thing is tinkerer against Mox Diamond, right? Like, if you get that down with haste, your opponent has Mox Diamonds, like, that's a 4-for-1.
That's great for goblins, but if you're using your naturalize on my Mox Diamond instead of my Oath or my library, I love that.
Right. Well,
99% of the time, I love that.
I also want to address that kind of thing, which is that even though a play like naturalize your Mox Diamond when you can save the naturalize, like, doesn't sound good before you're in the match, once you're in the match, that can absolutely be the right play.
No, I agree.
You are exposed to that. You cannot change the fact that you're exposed to that, right? So we can say that the size of the edge is debatable, but the fact that there is an edge, there is equity to be gained, I think is important. And of course, if you are the opposite of blessed, you're cursed, and you see those Mox Diamonds in multiples at uncomfortable stages of the game, I definitely think that's a liability. And so I just kind of wanted to add sort of the final thing, which is just that I have never at any point argued, and I still run 2 Mox Diamonds in my Red Green Elf list, I've never argued against the utility of having a Mox Diamond in your opening hand. The entire, you know, thought process here is trying to weigh that explosive potential of having that card in your opening hand versus the possibility that it showing up later in the game is, you know, really quite bad. And that's kind of an interesting thing to unpack. And, you know, I play a I main a deck, right, that has load-bearing Mox Diamonds, and I've kind of learned to have a very polarized love-hate relationship. Or actually, it's just a hate relationship because I would kick him to the curb the moment I had
You get
breeding
the
pool.
gush and put them down. What are you so mad about there? That sounds great.
I mean, tropical island would just
Okay.
I'll trade you.
Well,
Yeah,
let's not. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
like
When you go there with it,
Yeah.
we're talking about a different format at that point.
yeah. Well, it's a classic vintage or old frame. Where you get fetch. You get fetch duel.
I just want to say that, like, I can count on probably more than one hand the number of games that I won over the weekend because of a Mox Diamond start. And so having a 4-of to just get those free wins, I mean, that's one of the reasons to play Red Green Oath over some of these other decks, is that it does have a free win button. you know?
This is the thing. And look, I'm not gonna discount what you're saying because I have made this argument many times when these what about questions come up.
Sure.
One of the classic things that your parents tell you about something, you're like, Mom, where's the peanut butter? Or it's not where's the peanut butter. It's like where's my glasses case, right?
Probably where you left them.
Where are you
No,
going
no.
with this, Lanny?
No. I'm going with this. I'm like, where's my glasses case? And you're like, you like search around and you're like, oh, never mind. They were in the drawer. And your mom goes over and is like, yeah, it's always the last place you look. And that is because once you found something, you don't keep looking. And so, yeah, like when you like play a game with Mox Diamond and you just like go like, oh yeah, Mox, I win, right? You don't have any perspective on what the game looks like if the Mox was another card, unless you're kind of taking extremely diligent notes, right? Because it's the other thing to say, like, I'm like, okay, well, like, I don't know, I've played a lot of Wild Growth in my Red Green Ponzo deck, right? And I didn't do a lot of losing when I did. And I could count on multiple hands when I drew Wild Growth and won the game. And it's kind of easy for you to be like, for me to just be like, because Wild Growth is a little bit less of a flashy card, it feels more like a, it's rather than sometimes a 10, sometimes a 2, it's rather like it's just always a 6, right? Those Mario Party dice. Anyways, deep cut. But that's the thing is like, I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's just imagine a world where, because you just didn't do a lot of losing in the weekend too, right?
Thanks to Mox Diamond.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's hard for you to assign losses. Listeners will recall that.
But also, but here's the other thing about, aside from getting ported, aside from it not being as explosive, aside from the important thing about Wild Growth is it taps for only green. Is another important downside of the card. When sometimes you need your red source.
No, I mean,
and also it throws a land in the graveyard, thereby feeding Terravore. There were times when I just kept a Mox Diamond in my hand because I didn't have another land to pitch. But then when I did get another land, I'm pitching it just to grow Terravore to get in for some extra damage. I think in at least one game it did change my clock.
Right, and that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, when you're blending, I mean, we are, as a result, blending like all of these considerations, right? And my point is that they're difficult to balance. And the other thing is like you kind of go in with different hypotheses, which is like the burden of proof is on the person trying to change something, right? Because if you have, that's the thing, is like if you have something that works, you're just gonna keep doing that thing. So long as it works.
I think your thing is that you change two things: that you put in Wild Growth and you put in Smokestack. So I think in that world, I do think there's a convincing argument to be made for Wild Growth, because you're also just trying to have some kind of junky permanents to throw around later in the game.
Well, yeah,
it feels like it's the other order. It's like he puts in Smokestack, and if you have Smokestack, you can't really play Mox Diamond.
You are forced to
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of the interesting thing, which was like, but it can be reversed such that I'm like, well, if I ended up deciding that smokestack wasn't the direction that I wanted to go, would I still have wild growth in my deck?
Well, let me ask you this: like, is there a reason to not go mono green if you're going the smokestack direction? You don't even need the Mox Diamond. You go all in on wild growth, and then you have a mono green deck that the mana's pretty clean, and you got a bunch of utility lands and a smokestack, and you just like,
right, if your red is there to beat the blue decks, and the blue decks also die to smokestack.
Yeah, you can go more in on smokestack, just ramp into it.
So I have kind of two answers to that question. One is sort of exactly what Levine said, which was just that like what you are suggesting works, and it is absolutely something I'm interested in. And then two, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't have to throw the red out with the Mox Diamond. You can simply play red cards in your sideboard and play the 9 free red sources, right? Because the red source count is 13 in the Mox list, right? I cut 2, so I brought it down to 11. You are allowed to play 9 red sources, like, in your deck if you want. Like,
you heard it here
simply,
first.
Yeah, you will simply cast Pyroclasm on turn 2 less often. You'll cast it on turn 3 less often.
True.
Like, that can happen. Like, but Pyroclasm, like, you're not in a polarized situation where you have to cast Pyroclasm on turn 2 or lose the game. And I actually think, because you've asked me this tough questions, like, why not mono green? I'm like, okay, well, why not mono green main deck and just play some of those red cards in the sideboard because they're good, and just allow for, like, I feel like, and, look, I'm going to dog on my my homie Fran here, who doesn't have a chance to sort of defend his position, so you'll have to do the defending for him. But he was...
That's a tall order.
He was...
I'm no Fran, let me just say that first and foremost.
He was on my case. My Bant Survival deck has 7 blue sources from lands, and the remainder come from Birds of Paradise, and then Survival for Birds of Paradise. And so he's just like, well, why? Like, you don't have enough blue sources for Meddling Mage, and he's right. Like,
but isn't Meddling Mage a 1 of in that deck?
No, it's a 3 of.
But in the main deck, really?
3 of in the main deck. Okay. Yeah. So in many ways, my deck was built around Meddling Mage, but really it's a green-white survival deck that splashes Meddling Mage. And so...
You could, like, survival for birds, and you could also discard your Meddling Mage to survival.
Exactly. Those are both excellent angles. I was like, listen, these curve considerations about, like, the Carson math and the curve considerations is about casting your spell on time. But you have to go a little bit deeper. Like, do you have to cast a spell on time? It's like, yeah, with Meddling Mage, sometimes you do. But it's not like I'm passing on turn 2 with my Wall of Roots, Wall of Blossoms, Sylvan Library, Survival of the Fittest deck without playing a card, right? Like, I've got enough green sources. I've got like 18 green sources or something, because I'm always about, like, doing something. It's like, and so sometimes you can cast Meddling Mage. Sometimes you have birds, it survives, and then you cast Meddling Mage on turn 2. That happened because my opponent was playing combo and can't remove her birds. Sometimes you just hit it naturally with your lands, and sometimes you can't, and then your next best play is a wall or a survival or something, just like anything else out of your deck. And then later on down the line, you top deck the source that you need, and you Meddling Mage, and you Meddling Mage the thing that's important in the game. Like, it doesn't have to be a crucial centerpiece of your plan. And so if you're the Ponza Oath deck, your 2-drops are Rishadan Port, Sphere of Resistance, Sylvan Library, and Oath of Druids. Now, granted, maybe you're in a matchup where you're boarding out some number of those 2-drops, but you have other things to do. It's not like the end of the world that you have a spell of a certain color and you can't cast it on time, over 90% of the time. Like, you can just, like, what if...
We're talking about 2 spells in the main deck here, though, really,
Exactly, right? It's just like, you've got other stuff to do, and you don't have to do it on turn 2. And then you also have to ask questions like, okay, let's the Mox Diamond package is proven, right? Like, Fran at times ran 3, and everybody seems to love 4.
I was trying to do 3 for a minute with the Forgotten Cave as the other thing, so I can just cycle it if I don't want it.
Yeah.
And just missing out on some explosive. Like, there was, like, I played that in the Sunday, the Andy Levine GP, and
You play 3 what?
yeah, 3 diamond and one
Forgot.
and one cave. And I was like, this did cost me a couple games. Just like if I could just imagine it as a Mox Diamond, whereas like I would have a much more consistent, explosive early game, and I just missed it because I have Forgotten Cave instead.
But Lanny, one thing that you're missing out on the Red Greedo thing, like Mox Diamond versus
Wild Growth.
Wild Growth, yeah, is okay. So one thing is I played this matchup a ton of Tide versus Red Greedo, where colored mana sources, regardless of whether red and green, are really important. Which is a case for like Wild Growth being helpful or being not that detrimental, because like you kind of want to go green. You want to have green, red up, and if you have multiple red sources, whether it's Mox Diamond or Forest or Carcosa Forest or Mountain or whatever, all you need is just one red source. And kind of what you're saying makes sense, where like you have a lot of ways to get to that red source, and you don't always need it right away. The case where like relying on Wild Growth is really bad is something against goblins, or any port deck that could port you off of your red source. A port or wasteland deck that could get rid of your red source.
Right. If all your red sources come from lands, you'll never cast a red sorcery against a port deck. Yeah.
Exactly. So like something like clerics or like any creature deck with wasteland reports, goblins.
Right.
These are the types of decks where you really want to cast Pyroclasm, and you're right that you don't necessarily need to cast it on turn 2, but you need to be able to cast it. And if they're wastelanding all your pain lands, or wasteland or porting all of your pain lands and mountain, then you're never going to cast your Pyroclasm.
Right, and
unless you just need to hold it in hand.
So I don't disagree. I just want to say that at the very least you can exercise a little discipline and sandbag a red source.
Yeah.
With alongside the Pyroclasm. It's something that I do quite often in Growtalk when my City of Brasses or my Moxes are being attacked, and I know I need access to colored mana, is I don't run them out until I'm ready to cast what I need to cast with that colored mana. That's the thing. It's like,
but the problem is like it can be really hard in that deck to hold the Carplucent Forest.
You don't have a choice,
especially because you need to cast your double green spells.
Yeah. You don't always have a choice, and that's the thing. And I think this is a great discussion, because like we are sort of attacking this problem from by hashing out all of the angles. And at the end of the day, like I'm not really so committed to my position that I wouldn't change it. Like I also just don't feel like I have to think too hard about changing it, because I just I know that after a jaunt through the smokestack Wild Growth experiment, I can always just go back to what other people or what the stock list is, right? And just be like, well, I liked it, but it didn't change much, right? So and I've done that with Growtalk, countless times, where it's just kind of like, I'm going to try. I spent a lot of time playing 0 days in that deck. Spent months with 0 days in my list. And after a brief detour, reducing the amount of days, I'm just like, I think days just works in this deck. And it just is. It's just another one of those things where you could be like, what about this? And not what about this alternative, just like, what about all the angles surrounding days? And you can't really measure it up. You're like, oh, your opponent could play around it, but like
playing off 1 mana every turn
sucks. Yeah. And like, just how good is it when it hits? Like, can you say that that's 80 points and then it not hitting, or you needing to sideboard it out, or it taking up sideboard space? Is that like minus 60 points and you can do better? Like how like what kind of system, what kind of reasoning can you use to really judge A versus B? And that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, it really does reduce down to vibes. And as we're having this conversation, I'm kind of like I kind of wonder, what is the most productive way forward when you and the homies kicking back Lobstercon and you start asking each other, like, what about this? Like, how do you frame that to be like a nice, healthy discussion that, brings both reasonable skepticism and and reasonable curiosity to new ideas. Because that's kind of, in a sense, that's kind of what Spy Colony has always been about. And in another sense, Spy Colony has always been about very unhealthy ways to have this discussion.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's why we tune in.
Yeah. And, so maybe I'm going to be kind of destroying the magic of our podcast by being like, what if we just stopped all the drama? And
don't worry, Mike will be back from his daughter's graduation soon enough.
Yeah, for your usual programming. But yeah, do we have a favorite thing we want to try besides Oath and Grotog after this weekend? Is there anything?
I always love playing dumb decks.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I gotta say, I was excited for a minute when you came in because I was like, oh, we're finally going to see Andy play with the gloves off, because you always play some brew or something like you're like, oh, I kind of put together this like little like this deck's going to do this thing and you just want to see if you can make it work. But like, I know that you're like a sicko and like a really good player. And so I was like, oh man, Andy's going to fly in and fuck up this tournament. And cause you don't always play your hardest in terms, not that you obviously play well at the meetup.
You don't shark the meetup.
Yeah, you don't shark. You don't make a deck choice that is to shark the meetup.
Yeah,
and
SWB kind of always plays a playable deck, but Andy has no fear about playing unplayable decks at meetups.
No, I brought the Bauble to 2 meetups. I brought Contamination 3 times, I think. And then
you won one of those times,
multiple
right?
times. What?
You won one of those times,
yeah,
right?
I won Contamination meetup. And I brought Tide to a few meetups, but every other deck I've brought to like only one. Like I've only played once in a meetup.
Yeah.
I brought like Breakfast. I still need to play the finals with Breakfast. I never played. We were 1-1. I was 1-1 against Ritz in the finals.
Yeah.
And we just never finished game 3.
Who's on the play in game 3?
What?
Who's on the play in game 3?
I'm on the play in game 3.
Oh, all right, hold on. Stay tuned to the next Spike Colony episode to see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll just do
Just
live
game
radio
3.
play.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that did not end up working out for me.
That's because you're on 2 hours of sleep. But I was like, oh shit, Andy's gonna come in here.
2 hours of sleep. That was part of it. Yeah, I guess like the last Lobstercon was the one where I played like I'm gonna play a good deck, and it wasn't even seen as a good deck at the time. But like, I think I knew it was a good deck.
Yeah, and
for that
people
metagame,
associate you with the deck more than anyone.
I still don't think it's a good deck.
Well, I don't know. It was a great. I think it was a probably the best meta deck for last year's Lobstercon.
Yeah,
and it was a lot worse for this year's Lobstercon.
Well,
as a meta call.
Going in, what do you think it was the best meta call?
Replenish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not totally set on playing Tide again, but I ended up being pretty busy like the few weeks leading up to LobsterCon.
I was
too. At a wedding.
That's why you all were spared, just to let you know.
I was at one of my best friend from college's weddings the night before LobsterCon. That's why so I was out at the wedding until 2 a.m. and then flew into LobsterCon day of. And so I didn't have a lot of time to prep with other decks, but I was pretty confident. So I was deciding between Tide, Elves, Tarrageddon.
Elves, which you have like
Replenish.
no reps with, right?
Yeah, Elves, which I have like no reps
Really?
with.
You were thinking of playing elves?
Yeah, I think it's just great.
Okay.
If there's like not a lot of burn decks running around, not a lot of goblins running around.
There was a lot of goblins on Saturdays.
I played against a burn deck.
Yeah, you ran into a bunch of goblins players, but
I was very happy to.
Yeah, but none of the goblins were at the top tables by the end.
But I will say that we're saying that, but the
like in the
whoever the non-rich Enchantress player, what was the name? Mike Packer. I watched that last game for the win-in, and it was against goblins.
Oh, okay.
And the goblins player was literally one green source away from like basically taking, like they had the Tranquil Domain in hand.
Oh.
They just blanked on green sources for a couple turns.
Talk about a deck with 9 green sources.
Well, yeah, cast your spells on time, y'all. Should have been playing
Mox Diamond.
Yeah, there we go. Mox Diamond goblins. You heard it here first.
I've done it.
Okay.
But yeah, I knew that Tide was not going to be the best call for it. I was expecting a lot more Survival Rock. I don't know what the metagame numbers are, but I just didn't see any Survival Rock.
No, I was surprised, actually. I think Survival Rock's a great deck, but I didn't see it really at all. But maybe people were trying other survival lists, or they just didn't want to go to time in the rounds, maybe.
Or they lost.
That too.
But Tide is pretty bad against Survival Rock,
Elves.
Enchantress, Elves, and these are all these. Survival Rock.
You don't love your
great,
Tigran
Elves,
matchup, right?
I don't love my Tigran. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, you don't love your Tigran.
I don't
matchup.
love it. I think it's winnable. You got to know how to play it. If your opponent knows how to play it from their side, it's an interesting matchup, I'd say, but I don't love it. SWB and I played on his version a few times, and I was crushing game ones, but game twos he had probably a bit of an edge. But yeah, I was doing something while I was talking with I talked a lot with Colton. He's buddies with Packer. He's been on Tide for a while. He won Eternal Weekend with it. Talking with him a bunch leading up to it. He also played in GP Flippy last weekend, and I think he was 1 win away from top 8. I forget exactly who was right, but he did pretty well there. But just I was doing the thing I didn't want to do a bit too much, which is try to have a little bit of game against all of these matchups.
Yeah.
Because I think that the Mono Blue Tide deck is a good I think it is a deck where you need. I think this is true of a lot of decks in pre-modern, but you really just need to sacrifice the matchups that you want to sacrifice, and go all in on all the other matchups and just fade your bad matchups. So I was finding myself kind of doing that as I was tweaking the deck, and I ended up with a list I liked for a blue heavy meta, and that's not what this top tables at Lobstercon here were like. I had a pretty good plan.
I don't know. Blue. I mean, this was the blue versus green Lobstercon, right? I guess the top 8 was just blue versus green versus non-basics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one Stifle Knot in the top 8. There's one blue-white Tide Still deck. I guess there was a lot of Dreadnought at the top tables. I played 3 rounds. Round 1, I played against Dr. Miguel Lugo, Javi Lugo's dad. Super friendly. He was on. We're shuffling up, and he's like, I just put together some invasion cards that I like. And he played a 5-color domain thing, and that was a fairly easy matchup because he is playing a lot of basics and has to play a lot of different colors. And once I get rid of his lands, he can't cast anything.
For those of you saying that Lobstercon is too spiky, just listen to what was just said there. I just put together some invasion cards.
Yeah.
Some of the room, we're still seeing that in the room. Come on.
Played Collective Restraint.
That card rules.
Played Harrow, which is a really bad card against counterspell decks.
Yeah. Just play Xantiswarm main so you can resolve your Harrows.
Yeah. So, anyway, that was round 1. Round 2, I was talking with other people from New York. I was talking to Cam, and he was saying he played against Ty, also from New York, right? Or Jersey.
Ty is Jersey. Yeah, Jersey lays claim to that.
He was on. He was
Ty Thomason, PT
Lanny and I were. We did commentary for one of these matches.
Yep.
But yeah, Ty. He's saying that he lost to Ty 2-0 in 3 turns each game. And I was like, well, I really hope I don't play that guy next round. And then I get paired against Ty round 2. Horrible matchup. Ended up being a fairly close game, 3-game set. I mentioned the Call of the Herd line is kind of a cool thing in part 1 of the podcast. But yeah, game 1, I just don't really have much of a shot. My hand had I think I did tide combo him, but I ended up with like all 4 of my tides in my hand, which doesn't enter much on the board. Even if I got Revolve his lands, he had a priest in play, so I wasn't. It was a pretty bad defeat there. Game 2, I was able to. He was hoping, or he was betting on me being on a Curse Totem plan, so he brought in his Calls of the Herd. I had furnaces for it, so I was able to really, really slow him down and then kind of take over from there. Game 3 was actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. In fact, my opening hand was 2 Factories, a Furnace, and a Null, and some other like useful blue cards, like an Impulse, a Mana Leak, something else. So I mulliganed that one because it had no blue sources. And then the second hand was basically a worse version of the same thing. Like it had a Powder Keg instead of the Annul and Furnace. So I had like 1 piece of good interaction, but also just double Factories. And instead of a Mana Leak, I had a Counter Spell, which I was never going to cast because it would take a while for me to get blue. So I felt that I had to keep that because I'm not going to be able to beat him on 5, regardless of what the 5 is.
Yeah.
So I just need to get lucky there. And he hit a turn 2 survival. And the game actually went on for a while longer after that. I was able to get a Furnace in play, but his Squee's fairly high up in the graveyard. He has Squee and Anger, and I was thinking between which one to exile.
Yeah, both options are great, unfortunately.
Right, both are really good for him to have. I went with a Squee because he didn't have creatures in like it. Yeah, it didn't seem like he had creatures in hand. He only had 2 cards in hand, so I needed to get lucky and have the Squee hit, have him miss on useful stuff, and then slam a Nev Disc I had in hand, and yeah, basically just Nev Disc and went from there. So,
quick aside,
creature.
Disc is something that ended up back in your deck for the day.
I believe in it.
Yeah, I brought it in the sideboard, and the interesting thing I was thinking about as I had it in my hand against Elves was one of the cards I was considering in that position was Hibernation.
Yeah,
okay.
Which would have been a lot better there, and a lot better of a call for the tournament as a whole. But I went with the Disc actually for Survival Rock, because that's a deck that it's a lot slower, a lot less explosive than these other green decks, and it doesn't really, like, Hibernation doesn't do much against them. Like, yeah, it bounces all their stuff, or a lot of things, but they're winning on this long, grindy card advantage game, and Hibernation just gives you an opportunity to, like, I'm phrasing this poorly. You're not in a good position to go Hibernation into Tide combo against Survival Rock because they have so much hand disruption.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to set up that sequence.
Yeah, trying to set stuff up against the Dress Therapy and sometimes Mesmeric themed Sadistic Hypnotist situation is
So Disc was there as a card that is good in that matchup and not awful in a lot of the other green decks.
Right.
Like it's or survival decks specifically, where like Powder Keg is a little unexciting. So another card that could have been in that slot would be the 4th Powder Keg. Keg is a little unexciting against Elves because like you really need to hit all their 1s, and you also really need to hit their Priest of Titania. So that's a 2. But if you up your Powder Keg to 2, and they have a Wirewood Symbiote, then like now you're hitting nothing useful. And also they run Tangle Wire, which is really bad for me because Tangle Wire forces you to tap the Powder Keg before it gets the counter added on it.
Right, because of AppNap, active player, non-active player stacking.
Right, so it really, really slows down Powder Keg, which is already like a slow card that doesn't do enough against elves. But anyway, yeah, I went back to the disc for a sideboard there. It felt as mediocre or worse as it felt last year, but was kind of like a necessary evil for certain matchups. And yeah, round 3 I played against Junk Terrageddon list. It ended up being fairly close. Game 1 was I was able to like tide him out. I don't know, get rid of all of his Mox Diamonds with a keg. Actually, he had a turn 1 Sylvan Library, and he was playing, because it was a junk list, he had a lot of pain lands. So he dealt himself 18 damage throughout the game, and I ended up winning with just
one conclave attack?
One factory attack, yeah.
Okay.
I just wasn't drawing creature lands, but like I had multiple tides. I tide comboed him, and then just played like a value tide to get rid of all of his lands, and like all of his white sources, so he couldn't swords my Mistress Factory, and then it also acted as protection for my Mistress Factory from Wasteland.
As if that card already wasn't doing enough.
Tide or
yeah.
Game 2 that felt bad because I had like a really good start against him. My hand was 4 islands, counterspell, misdirection, and AK. And he turn 2 or turn 1 Gerard's Verdict to me.
Oof.
So I got to misdirection that back.
Oh, nice.
I think he went turn 1 Library, turn 2 Gerard's Verdict, so I was able to misdirection that back. But then I got like quite flooded. He stuck a small Terravore, a 3/3 Terravore, so not too scary. I had about 4 lands in play, 3 in hand, and a Factor Fiction. That was my whole hand. And my Factor Fiction hit 4 lands and a Mana Leak, which is quite awful because either I take, and he split 4 lands and Mana Leak.
Right.
Either I get, my hand is 7 cards of all lands, or he gets a 7/7 Terravore and I just get a Mana Leak.
Right.
So I had to take all of the lands, and then from there it wasn't. I just
I feel like I would have split some lands so that your Terravore is deterministic to get bigger, right?
I think, yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of an interesting one to think about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was really trying to get an Armageddon through, and
so the Mana Leak is that important.
Yeah,
but then if your opponent has 4 lands, then they can recover from Armageddon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And yeah, he did get an Armageddon through. I was like, I was probably being a little sloppy here. We talked about it a bit after. I had a Dust Bowl. He wasteland my Dust Bowl, and I like activated the Dust Bowl to get rid of a land, which put me down from counterspell mana, from like feigning counterspell, but my hand was all lands. Which he knew that a lot of the cards were lands, but he didn't know all of them were lands.
How crucial do you find threatening counterspell is? Because you've talked about it sort of multiple times on the podcast and in our discussions, and for some reason I'm really locked in on the world where people just are going to try to play their spells. Like, sure, they're going to do one of 2 things, right? They're going to either test spell or they're going to ship it. And in both worlds, like, I guess it's better for you if they're just doing test spells and going a little bit slower, but I gotta say, maybe it's a leak in my game. I don't know. Like, I just don't feel like I can manipulate my opponents into playing around non-existent counterspells unless it's kind of like free to do so, right?
I would definitely try to do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
but it comes at a cost, right? It comes at a cost of you not being able to do stuff like get your Dust Bowl value, get your, like, use your mana.
Yeah, but I didn't
efficiently.
Value.
Right. Case by case basis, right?
The thing I really needed to do that game, the thing I really needed to do that game was not have 7 lands in my hand, but that was hard for me to control. The other thing I needed to do that game was, have him slow his game down enough, so that I can get a Powder Keg, get rid of. He had 3 diamonds in play and a few other lands. and then tide combo him and like bounce the Terravore.
Yeah.
So, or like survive long enough that my Terravore I need to survive long enough to keep the Terravore small to do all of those things. But yeah, I mean, like I was definitely a bit off my game today. There are some small things that I wasn't doing. Like obviously in that case, just keeping like feigning counterspell mana, but just some sort of bluffs. Like I was doing this way better last year of, doing like bluffing, having a stifle or a force spike or whatever of just like. What I do a lot is like, I guess someone goes to fetch, just like touching an island.
Yeah. Some intentional live Telta stuff for sure.
Or same thing with like as people like start announcing spells and everyone blew up. Or I'm not always trying to do that. You know, got to mix up the game a little bit. But like I was way more like I just wasn't on my game as well yesterday, and like those are things that I'm very conscious about when I'm playing the deck. Is just how do I get my opponent to think I have XYZ cards in hand.
Right. SWB and I talked a lot about bluffs on our drive over, and then did that podcast, and then managed to stifle bluff a burn opponent in the Thursday tournament. Like he cracks a fetch, and he actually didn't he did kind of pass priority, but I actually gave him the old 1 sec. I gave him the old hold on, and then I was like resolves. But of course, afterwards I have to you keep pretending that I'm playing Dreadnought. I mean, that stuff comes up quite often. A lot of decks I play can pretend to be Dreadnought, so so I've done a fair bit of that, but it's just like there's no point in bluffing the stifle there sometimes, because it's just like, well, like the burn player is just like, I'm going to lose if you just Dreadnought stifle me, right? So it's just kind of like they're not really.
They're kind of happy if you stifle.
Yeah, they're not trying to play around anything. They're just trying to be like, the only way I win here is if I just freaking can do my burn thing. But he did play game 2 afraid of stifle, but it's just kind of like, it just doesn't really affect the outcome. But, bluffing is pretty free, and it's always kind of a fun thing to add some spice to your game. But yeah, it kind of like, I don't know, Bill, how did you feel? You kind of set out with this goal to improve your gameplay or just like get better with the deck. Do you feel like what, like the sharpening for you mentioned was like kind of these like little intricacies of like what's the first like land you up on signaling, that kind of stuff. Little small nuances. Did you feel like you made any like sort of big mistakes that you learned from, or like had some lines that you wish you had taken? Did you like reflect upon how like you were going to do things in the future? Like, did you? Because I feel like I'm leaving from this weekend really inspired to really nail down my improvement process, my improvement for trying to think about what I did in games and have like a real system for improvement. I'm curious if you, what you learned or what you feel like are good habits to learn and improve.
So I don't know if I have like a game plan for how to further improve, but I just like found myself coming up with like, I was just like seeing the matrix in some moments, I was like, actually, like there was moments like I always try to play around the stifle with the fetch, right? But then there was a moment where I was like, actually, I think I sandbagged. I played on my lands in a way that I saved my. I didn't fetch until I had enough mana to like, I'm gonna fetch here because I want them to go down on blue mana because I want them to try to stifle this fetch. But then I have the follow-up land, and then I'm gonna throw, whatever it was, Sphere or Oath or whatever, and thing that they do not want.
Right, the fetch is bait.
Yeah, the fetch is just bait. Something that I never, I don't think I ever consciously thought about before. Like, I might have, you know, sometimes you sequence things like, this probably happened to you where like, oh, I made the optimal play without thinking about making the optimal play.
Right.
You know?
You're like, you make a play and then afterwards you're like, oh, that's even better than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I was just like, I feel like I was very locked in and consciously making very good plays. There was one round though that I was very embarrassed by. I played against an opponent, Alice, which I have to give a shout out to. They're super nice to me, super nice opponent. They played really well. But game one against them, they played Island, Port, and Go. I play Mox Diamond, Land, Oath, and they just scoop.
Yep.
And this is where things get off the rails for me, is like, I feel like one of the things I want to improve on is like not getting frazzled when I can't understand what's happening, or when like things are going really bad. Because like I think sometimes I can just shake it off, but other times like I got kind of salted a little bit at a Pauper Weekly, like I guess it was on Tuesday. I was playing against an opponent who's like been beating me a lot lately. Shout out to Alex, great Pauper player. He's like one of the Pauper OGs in New York. And I was playing against him, and I'm playing a deck that drew a shit ton of cards and just could not draw the one card I need. I was just like flooding out, at the end of the game, I was like, fuck, dude. I was like so tilted. Like, not in a way that I was like, I wasn't upset with Alex.
It wasn't directed, yeah.
Yeah,
it's hard, yeah.
I was just like, fuck, man, like, it just feels like you're, trying to solve a puzzle under pressure and like the pieces just getting swatted out of your hand, It's like
solving a puzzle when you own a cat.
Yeah, exactly. So I gotta, that's something I need to work on. I'm on my table game. Not even because it necessarily affects my gameplay in situations that I'm already losing.
You just want to have that SWB Zen. The
Zen, yes, exactly. That is something I witnessed this weekend that I'm like,
I found the Zen this weekend. Like, I just had Zen, and then I was also worried. I'm like, does that mean I'm washed? Like, am I washed that I don't, like, I'm not letting the losses get to me? It's tough. It's tough.
No, I don't think
you
so.
You want to care, but you also want to not care. It's a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, well, it's not that you don't care, so you brush it off easier.
Yeah.
So anyway, now I'm like, okay, does that mean that they're on Dreadnought and they just don't want to deal with this game? Or that they're on Growatog is one of the things I thought. And
I would have assumed Growatog. Obviously, I have Growatog bias, but Growatog is absolutely an island portent deck that cannot beat an Oath unless you're me and you play, or you sometimes play the one main deck Ray of Revelation.
Yeah, so what I ended up doing was kind of like going to sideboard. I kind of like sided kind of halfway into kind of like the mid-range plan that I normally go with against Growatog. And I didn't go like all in on like, I don't even know if I put any red blasts in. I just didn't want to go all in on something and then find out that I was way off. And so I kind of did like a little half step, little, goofy sideboarding. And then, I saw a cantrip. So I keep an opening hand that has like 1 or 2 sphere. And they go turn to Crystalline Sliver. And I'm just like, I was like mentally crushed. Like, I was like, oh, what the fuck? Like, that was literally the last thing I could have expected to happen. Like, one, because all I saw was Island. Now I'm seeing like Dromar's Cavern and Gemstone Mine. And I'm like, oh, this is like, I don't even know what I can expect out of this. Also, like, I played against a lot of Pauper slivers, but never pre-modern slivers. So in my head, I'm like, okay, they only have muscle sliver, because in Pauper there's 12
sinew sliver.
There's 12 muscle slivers.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, they're only going to have 1 muscle sliver, but they're going to have plated sliver, and then they're going to have probably winged sliver, because there's not that many slivers. So like, also I think in my hand is a Call of the Herd. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a 6 speed bump until they just fly over me and just fucking wreck me, right? So I'm like, it's like Crystalline Sliver, already the mental damage is like immense, right? And then I'm like
Crystalline Sliver is 2/2 Shroud?
Basically, yeah.
2 white, 2/2 Shroud?
Yeah.
Shroud, yeah.
And so then I'm starting to play goofy with like, I tank so much during my turn to try to figure out like, is it worth it for me to put down this sphere? It probably just hurts me more. If they get Muscle Sliver down, then like at a certain point, like if they have another one, I'm trying to like do the math of like what happens if I draw Pyroclasm, and also the combat math starts to get weird as like Bladed Sliver comes down, and now they're all 1/2 additional. So it's like there's like a lot of cognitive load between like me being kind of like shook a little bit by like the totally different play pattern from what I was expecting and different matchup. Also, it being a matchup I've never played before, me not understanding what their range is within the deck. They ended up bolting my Call of the Herd, which is not always I was expecting. They also showed me a plow, sorts of plowshares. These are all things I just was not expecting it's like a 5-color slivers list, which, again, I'm coming at it from a Pauper mindset where Pauper, you're playing Winding Way and Lead the Stampede, so you're incentivized to go pretty much all in on creatures. And so like having these utility spells is not something I was expecting within the range. And then like the part that I was most embarrassed by is like I was tanking so long on my turns and then go to combat. Now I'm tanking during combat because I have 2 Mishra's Factories. I put up one Mishra's Factory, I put up the other Mishra's Factory to block, and then I go to pump them, and Alice is like, this one has summoning sickness. I was like, oh, do you mind if I like kind of resituate? Obviously, if they say no, that changes everything. I'm like, fine, I'm locked in on this block. But I'm like, I made my whole block with the understanding that like with forgetting this as summoning sick, is it okay with you if I kind of resituate how I'm doing this? They're like, yeah, I don't care. So then I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know if it gets better, honestly, for me thinking about it.
Yeah, it's like, and then you made a worse block.
Yeah, I'm like,
I should have just let it lay.
Yeah. So then I go again. So I've seen Bolt, right? So now I go, okay, I just put up one, and then I pump it and pump itself. On the pump itself, they swords it, and then again, I'm so like razzled here in so many ways. So now I'm like, am I gaining 4 or gaining 3 off the swords? And like we get into like all this stuff about like the stack for a second, and I'm just like, I'm playing like a goober at this point. Like it's just all
it sounds like a very kind of classic like the dominoes start falling where
and like it all falls apart.
Yeah, you needed to meditate.
Exactly.
I needed to take a break and just be like, okay, I am a little disoriented here, but I'm a good Magic player. I'm a smart kid. I'm gonna do smart kid things, and I'm just gonna figure out what matters. Like, what are they doing? What am I going to do about it? You always got another game after that game to kind of make the change too. So you kind of got a 2-game window to try to develop a plan. And I think those sort of like stop and recenter moments, they're kind of hard to do because I think one of the things that I do pretty often, I don't know if this was in play in this match, was after that Meddling Mage wall situation that I told you about, during game 2, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. It's hard to not be like focusing on like I didn't do this right. And like,
I'm starting to imagine what would have happened in a game that's over, right? Like I'm what if I did those walls? And I'm like using
you're mentally traveling down a timeline that no longer exists.
Absolutely.
Rather than focusing on the match that you're in.
So I realized I was on this path. So my response to that ended up being like, okay, I just turned to my notepad and I just like wrote down the thing. I wrote down the Meddling Mage thing, like just some sort of shorthand. And that sort of let me offload that. And I'm like, I'm going to ruminate this. Like, I need to ruminate on this, but just not right now.
Yeah, you put it away.
So I put a note down, just like ruminate on this later.
Dear diary.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's kind of funny. Our brains don't want us to be good at Magic sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Magic is just a very punishing game. For any a minor misplay can cost you an entire game. I definitely had misplays that I feel like it cost me entire tournaments. You know what I mean? Where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, now I'm put into this bracket where I would have been another bracket. Like, and you know what I mean? Like in those kind of moments, you're like, and you just kind of like ruminate on those things. Yeah, and it's like, Magic is a very kind of like following the letter of the law kind of game, you know, and it's like doing all these things perfectly, and
windows like the sack priority went like, you know, like stuff with mana and just like everything. There's just so many little details that end up having big impacts, and so many. And the thing is, like, maximizing on your equity often involves kind of doing some of those things that Andy talked about. I think that you know, if Flores was here, he kind of talked about the never played a perfect game in my life. It's like never played a perfect turn in my life.
Yeah.
But included in that is also using the non-gameplay stuff where you are like, you know, you should be playing
your table
games.
game.
Yeah, your table games. Absolutely. Like, you should maximize your table game for the turns. Like, oh, did I let on, you know, by how fast I said I keep, how fast I shuffled my cards? I started thinking like, not that anybody is taking advantage of this exploit, but if you're shuffling your lands to the front of your hand every time and your spells to the back, right? And you draw your card for the turn and you kind of shuffle it around, it's like, is your opponent going to pick up on that? And then I noticed this in commentary, and it's just like, we actually all do it. We're thinking through plays, so we shuffle that card to the front of our hand.
Yeah.
And then we think about another play, and then we kind of move that card back. And if your opponent is paying attention to what you're doing, they might actually just get a read on being like, oh, this person's thinking about casting Naturalize here, you know, thinking about playing a land here and playing a creature, or holding the land and, you know, playing around Armageddon. You know, so there's random stuff like that. And, you know, that's part of playing a perfect game of Magic is to like, you know, just be cognizant of the like sort of countless things that are going on at the same time. It's just like kind of fascinating. And that's what makes it really hard also to just like have a process to be like, okay, like, you know, next time I'm going to do this. I'm going to get into these good habits. I'm going to get into better habits of thinking, et cetera.
One of the like table game things that I like to do, because you're talking about shuffling the hand a lot, and a sort of like a player who like hones in on that is going to maybe like get some minor amount of information or like maybe glean something from that. I like to kind of like, if I'm in a matchup that I feel like very confident that I understand what I need to do, and I when I'm feeling very confident, right, and I know what the status of the board is and like where I expect the match to go. One of my table game things that I like to do is just set my hand down and just, I have the cards, like my next hand drop is like ready to go off the top. I'm like, or to look at my hand less often.
Yeah.
Like, put the hand down and look at your opponent and look at what they're doing.
Yeah, remember your whole cards, man. That's the classic thing.
And then like one of the things I also like to do sometimes is like not even look at my hand when I play the card. I just have like everything face down, and I just pick up the card off the top and like, here's my land drop, here's my spell for the turn. Like, I like doing stuff like that because it's like, it just feels very confident. It feels like, you know what I mean? It's also
presence,
like, now, was I doing that in the Slivers match? No. I had no aura left. It was all gone.
Yeah.
I was looking like a goober.
Alice is sitting on her table. She's like, wow, I got him. Like,
like, who is this?
This man is shooketh.
I to my core.
Yeah.
To my core. Now, coming back, game 3, I kind of got back together a little bit. I still felt quite embarrassed about like my previous game, but like I, you know, got to a hand that had Oath, played the Oath, just took a deep breath and got there with that, you know?
Yeah, Oath the Druids will make up for a lot of difficult play decisions.
Yeah, and I think they might have also had awkward. I can't remember the exact. I know Oath was involved. I don't think that they got to a disenchant in time. Also, like, again, I'm looking at that deck. I'm like, it's got to have a disenchant effect of some kind. I don't know what I'm looking for. You know, I don't know, but I don't know how much. Like, it's also like this is some of the edge that you get when you play an off-meta deck, though. And so I'm sure Alice, which again, I'm encountering this slivers deck in like the 3-1 bracket, or the 3-1 or 4-1 bracket. So this deck is crushing right now. Like they're doing also. I don't know pronouns, so I'm just gonna go with they. They're just crushing the bracket. So I like clearly they're like piloting well, and also maybe getting some equity off like people, goobers like me who are like done. As to, I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, which keep yourself together.
Yeah, which I think that's something I wanted to again, talking about playing into the blind meta, like I was saying earlier, where I'm like, okay, do I keep a sphere hand or an oath hand? Also, like playing where like I think one of the things I get caught up in doing, because when I play in Pauper, when I see the first basic land, I normally know what we're doing. Right. You know what I mean? Or I know it's in the opponent's range.
You have a few less pre-modern.
I have a few less on pre-modern, but also pre-modern occasionally has these
more possibilities.
Like more, yeah. Occasionally, like these sort of wild possibilities, like a slivers deck. I against one of my opponents in the last round that I played. Opponent was on survival opposition, which I had played against them in the round before, or in the day before. Sorry, give me 1 second. In the day before, and they were on green-white oath. So I was their name was Rob. I played against Rob. Green-white oath the day before. So I saw Forest pass. I'm like, quite likely that this is gonna be the oath mirror again, and then I need to be right. Like, and it's green white oath. So I'm like, okay, this is not my favorite matchup for me. Then the next turn they played Wall of Roots, and I was like, oh, like it was also like, because the thing is, again, talking about like in your case, you're talking about like, oh, I made that meddling mage play that I didn't like, and so I'm just thinking about this whole timeline that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think one of my weaknesses in my game is I saw turn 1 Forest. Now I'm planning out a whole timeline for a game that I don't even know what deck this is yet. Right. You know what I mean? I haven't gotten enough signals to feel confident. I should, or at least that I should not feel confident. Yeah. But I did again, and now the Island Port and Go. That was like, I'm confident that it's probably Dreadnought or Groatog, you know?
And you do have to kind of adapt. Like, you actually can just kind of sort of start and just be like, okay, like, obviously a lot of these plays that I have access to depend on what my opponent is doing. But if your opponent still has a wide range where they just, like, start on, like, if your opponent in pre-modern starts on Gemstone Mine, they could be playing Slivers. They could be playing Iggy Pop. They could be playing Terrageddon. They could be playing Angry Hermit, HFEB. Even just like a black-green deck that with horrible mana. It's like anything is possible from that point. So you need to you need to sort of not worry about them too much sometimes, and just kind of make the most straightforward play that you can. Unless there's some mines, like some, landmines out there, right? Which is just kind of like, if I do this and they, are playing some sort of crazy Iggy Pop deck, then I might get super punished. But other times you have to be just like, look, if they have it, they have it. And it was sort of interesting. I actually ran into that where my opponent played the card. So I got a Dreadnought in play. This was day 1. I'm playing blue-white Dreadnought. I got a Dreadnought in play. And my opponent played Skyshroud Poacher, which is 2 GG for a 3/3 Rebel that has 3 generic mana, tap, search your library for an elf, and put that card on the battlefield. And I am seeing this card for the second time. The first time was actually in Discord. One of the homies was like, this is what I would do with elves. And I was like, this is an interesting card. And so I didn't know what this card was capable of. And I was just like, okay, well, my opponent's range is included to every elf ever printed. And I was like, what can you do with this? And I kind of just didn't see the thing just because like I hadn't like, you know, some of these lessons are really hard to like, or some of these puzzles are really hard to solve on the fly. And so they're tapping out for it this turn. And so I impulse in response, and I know that I'm looking for like Dazed Swords to Plowshares. And instead I found a Stifle. And Stifle is a pretty flexible card against elves. So I was just kind of like, okay, well, not only is the Sky Shroud Poacher an activated ability, also my hand's empty, by the way. Like I've got this Dreadnought out and my hand's completely empty because we've done like a naturalized fight over it or something. So I'm like, I'm just going to grab this Stifle and, you know, it's probably going to stop the Poacher from surprising me. And it's probably going to stop like an Antico Vigilante Utabi if my opponent has it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I grab the Stifle because there's no Plowshares, no Daze. So I let the Poacher resolve and I draw for turn, and my draw is a second Dreadnought. And so my hand is Dreadnought Stifle. And so I'm facing a range that's just like every elf in existence ever could be in my opponent's deck. But I'm just kind of like, 2 Dreadnoughts has to be pretty good against this. Like, right? Like, right? And so I'm like, okay.
I mean, what do you have to, like, so is the Poacher is just is it tap or just sink a green into it and you do it?
It's 3 generic mana, tap it.
Okay. So your Stifle can only get around 1 turn of that.
That's
right?
true, but I'm attacking with Dreadnought this turn, so my opponent only has 1 turn.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is like, I think I just jam the second Dreadnought there every time.
Right. And so instead of worrying about all these things that could pop out of the Sky Shroud Poacher, I'm just kind of like, well, the entire world of things that could pop out of it is really just 1 elf, right?
Drain Sherman is an elf, right?
Yeah, Drain Sherman is an elf. So I was like,
that's an elf and all his buddies, the Rock and his minions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was just like, well, you know, whatever my opponent can do, it probably can't beat 2 Dreadnoughts, right? So I put the second Dreadnought on the battlefield, and my opponent taps the Poacher, gets a Korean Ranger, untaps the Poacher, gets a Deranged. On my turn, untaps the Poacher again, and gets another Deranged.
That's it.
And that's 8 squirrels with +2/+2 each. That's 24 toughness in squirrels against 24 power in Dreadnoughts.
These are New York City squirrels. These are some raw squirrels.
Yeah, these squirrels are buff. They're just cracking those nuts like just raw dogging.
They're getting all the French fries out of the trash can. They're bulked up.
Yeah. The squirrels on steroids. And I just, like, of course, Korean Ranger and Strange Hermits are cards that are in elf decks. But it's those little things, because like Deranged Hermit, I think before, up until that day, I sort of defaulted just being like, yeah, Deranged Hermit makes 2/2s, you know, 2/2s or 1/1s.
You never thought about 5/5s.
I hadn't played enough elves to do just like the 2 hermits in play lines, elves or black green survival or whatever, just like anything to put 2 hermits in play. Like I hadn't done that a lot, and so I thought it was just like one of those things where like I didn't even really kick myself too hard because of exactly what you said. It's like, oh well, I would just jam the second Dreadnought here. I think most people would.
Yeah, you got to close it out. I mean, what changes? I mean, if you don't do that, they still put out the one Deranged Hermit, and you are probably not going to get in.
No, they activate it, and if I'm sharp enough, I just stifle the activation. Now, granted.
But they can untap it with Ranger.
No. The first thing they got with it was Ranger. So they go tap it, get Ranger, untap it, tap it again, get Hermit. Your turn, untap it again, get Hermit.
I see.
And so basically, if I didn't draw the Dreadnought, I would have at least considered the line to tap to stop the Poacher activation. Now, when the Ranger comes out, that's too late for me, and my opponent can start getting Hermits. They would get 1 fewer Hermit, but they would have had enough toughness. And so I think I have a problem where, and Levine pointed this out in the Bearded Dragon, like kind of pointed out some of the mistakes that I made at that tournament, I kind of overthink things and kind of like have problem in these like sort of end games, like where I sort of like have a resource and like I sort of just like short circuit and playing around too much or not playing around, like, just don't solve the end game well. And so I know myself, and I know I would have punted the stifle anyways, but the correct play is to stifle the first poacher activation to stop Querying Ranger no matter what. And so that play was available to me, and drawing Dreadnought meant there was a 0% chance that I was ever going to make that play, because of course I'm going to put a second Dread. Like, that's just like catnip, right? That's kind of like a classic one. I had another spot where like I dazed a powder keg even though I was holding a disenchant on my hand for it with no other targets. And sticking daze is just like catnip to a dazed player, obviously. Like a dazed player almost never passes up sticking a daze, even if they have like some other card that can answer. And so that kind of stuff happened to me, and I get baited a lot. And that one's hard because the reason why bait is tricky is because like it seems so obvious to do the thing that you're being baited into. And that's kind of like, you can't really, like, just the way our brains are designed is that we're going to fall for traps sometimes. So I give myself some forgiveness for not seeing that. But shout out to Manny Mutinho playing this Trinity Green deck list that was like, probably like 80% of it was straight out of the Inquest magazine from 2001. Yeah, this was like kind of a classic. I think Nationals or Champs like sort of Nemesis era standard deck that had plow unders. And actually a lot of the cards in it were cards that Mike and I were sort of discussing in our podcast where we're like, well, what if we played Rafellos Elves? Like Rafellos Plow Under was the Trinity Green build, and that has that history. So,
and that's without survival?
Well, I think I don't know if the Elves deck of that era had survival. I think he did Discord DM me the Inquest magazine page with that deck list, but other old heads in the house remember that deck well. All I know is that this sicko was out there battling with 4 deranged, 4 Sky Shroud poacher, and then just like 1 symbiote, 1 Querying Ranger.
What?
Yep. And then no Multani's Acolyte, but he did still have survival. So it was kind of like and he did have Plow Under. So it was kind of like just a fat Elves deck, like just an Elves deck with just like a lot of fat, more lands, more stuff to do with your mana, and just like a ton of fun. But yeah, it's just funny because like I would just love if I could like find that switch that lets you go through each decision with sort of like clear and focused perspective. Mm-hmm. Like the ability to just know you're in a spot, have a plan to navigate that spot, and organize everything that you're thinking about that position, and then eventually execute on that. Because that process is just kind of fundamental to Magic, and it's so important. It's so funny because I always think it's so interesting to watch people play too, because I think there's a skill in explaining your thought process. Yeah. But there's also the people who are just like, they're just so seasoned. They're just so intuitive.
They just flow state
and
it.
They just flow state it. Like, and SWV, like he talked about on the drive over, he's just like, I don't tank. I don't think about stuff. Yeah. I just make the play that makes sense to me. And I thought that's interesting. It's like, yeah, maybe SWV just like kind of doesn't make mistakes, or is he capping his skill ceiling at just what his intuition tells him? Or is his process about improving his intuition and not improving his like tanking?
I think you can definitely improve intuition, and that's something that does improve as you play more Magic and you get more reps on different things. You see scenarios over and over again, and they're like, and
you train your brain to be like, squirrels can be 3/3s, and your opponent can get 8 of them, and 8 times 3. Yeah, it's 24.
Yeah, you don't even do the math like that anymore. You just know, like, like
24 equals 2 dreadnoughts. Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
Or your life total.
And it's funny because like as you gain that intuition, like there are certain plays that you see opponents make sometimes, like, and this can be true at the F&M level, like your opponent makes a play that you don't even immediately know why you know it's bad, but you're like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't gonna be good. Like they're making a huge mistake here. Like
yeah, bad play. Yeah. Like,
or something that like you see your opponent do, and that lets you know instantly that they don't understand what the matchup is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like a sideboarding decision like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why'd you take this out? Why'd you put this in? What were you thinking there? And they're like, come up with their explanation. You're like, oh, I think that's a misassignment of roles.
Yeah, and it's something that you can't always immediately explain, but you're like, you see a certain cyber card, and you're like, oh no, like that's not
gonna work.
Something what I'm worried about.
You can't just like play that, and then you have to scroll back, and then you have to be like, well, why do I know that? And then you kind of like explain it away. But it's tough because sometimes your gut tells you something like Mox Diamond is good or Mox Diamond is bad, like you know.
Well,
and then you have to. And I'm just saying this broadly because I think like Mox Diamond discourse is like super interesting because we'll never really know, but a lot of people have sort of instincts and intuitions about how a card like that performs, and it is really hard to just like, you know, just be able to say like, oh yeah, like you know, this is the card or this is not the card.
One of the things that maybe is an interesting thought that I never had before is like trying to maybe like again, maybe this is like we're talking about a game that has a very high cognitive load, and maybe trying to increase your cognitive load to this degree in a matchup is not fruitful, or doesn't give you enough edge to like meaningfully change a game. But like, you know, the thought of like, oh, my opponent played this card that I think maybe like is a sideboarding error, but like maybe there's times when you can exploit that where like it's like, oh, my opponent thinks that the matchup is about this, so I can continue to bluff that the matchup is about that.
Oh yeah, go along with their plan until you just like devastate them.
Yeah, it's like
just be like, yeah, sure, you're the beatdown.
Yeah, you know, it's the classic like wave the left hand and then hit with the right hand.
Oh
yeah, kind of thing. You know, it's like,
oh, I love that. I can't wait to do that to somebody. Just be like, oh yeah, they just they think they should be attacking here. That's interesting. And just be like,
you know, and you can posture that it's like, oh damn, like you know, that can be like a table game. Like again,
I feel like Landstill players get to do that because I think like Landstill is like kind of a deceptive deck where you're like, ooh, like they're really on the back foot here. They're getting hit, they're getting punched, and then they decree, and then they you look down and they got 3 factories, and you're attacking for 4, and they're attacking for 9, and you're like, oh no, I'm losing this race. Yeah. Definitely a tasty one. Of course, definitely exploitative play, like a play that is taking advantage of your opponent's weakness, something to have in your arsenal. You got to prepare for prepared opponents, and you have to punish unprepared opponents. That is another poker topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you were talking about. You know, I wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
Because when I was listening to you and SWB talk when we were on the ride up, I thought about this thing that Pokemon players, like competitive, like Pokemon players that play on like not the card game but the actual like Game Boy games. Like there's competitive battling, and I've done a lot of that over the years.
Yeah, VGC, right?
Yeah, well, VGC is the double battles,
okay.
but I do like mostly like 1v1, like the team of 6, that's a game that's all about switching, right? Like the meta is all about like because your turn is either you can do a move or like, an attack or whatever your attack is, or you can switch, and your switch is your entire turn.
Yep.
And so there are times when like the turn is, and it's an interesting game because you and your opponent select your turn at the exact same time,
right?
And then the turn plays out, right? So it's not like Magic where it's like I get to have my turn and then my opponent, like you're both making your selection for what you're doing for the next turn at the same time, which I think is very unique among turn-based games.
Yeah. Rock paper scissors.
Yeah, but
classic one.
Exactly, but you're but you're finding out like but it's like rock paper scissors with so many more possibilities, right? Like I think like Pokemon has like a Magic the Gathering level set of possibilities in the game where like things can go really crazy, and like you're scouting for what moves your opponent might have, like because your opponent can only each Pokemon can only have 4 moves.
I think our listener base has like a familiarity,
a base level,
with
so
like red version, blue version, but like they've never heard of what the meta is for 6v6 competitive.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm saying all this because like what can happen is like, oh, I think my opponent I have water type Pokemon out. My opponent has electric type Pokemon. They're gonna do the super effective lightning type attack or electric type attack on my water type. So I'm gonna switch to my ground type to eat that, right? That is a basic. That is what like a high school level play, right? Or you can make the college level play. My opponent,
Muscle Doge.
Yeah, my opponent has the electric type out. I have the water type. They know like I know that they're going to switch to their ground type, so I switch to my grass type. And so when they switch, I switch. Now they're in front of another bad matchup.
Yeah, and you have tempo.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You don't have to switch.
Exactly.
But your opponent is forced to.
And you can get into these positions where it's like a bunch of switches until you can stick a Pokemon that you can like increase its stats in a way that just makes the opponent
right. Your opponent takes you get a free turn because your opponent's doing some dodging, and you just like freaking attack like a stat move, the thing we deleted off all our Pokemon.
The Swords Dance and the Dragon Dance.
We're like, I don't want this. Why would I ever cast?
Well, that's because you're so much over leveled when you're playing Pokemon. When you're playing Pokemon of the same level, then you do have to up your stats so you can just start one-shotting stuff.
Yeah.
So where that can get messy is I made a college level play against high school level opponent. Yep. I made the switch. I thought I was baiting a switch.
Yep.
They didn't read it that way, and so they just crushed me.
Yep.
Now I'm down a Pokemon. That can change the entire tide of a match.
Yeah.
So I think that there is moments in Magic like that too, where it's like my opponent isn't reading the game right, and so if I make a move that I would make against a very high level player against an opponent that I don't think is reading the room correctly, I can lose a lot of equity.
Right, exactly. Like, that you get a little bit of this chicken where like, maybe you've got a lackey hand and you're like, well, my opponent saw that I'm on goblins. Are they going to keep a hand that can't be lackey? Am I going to keep a hand that's like reliant on lackey to get the business done? And you're going like left, right, center and like trying to like, penalty kicks, right? Like, and those jukes and same thing with Dreadnought. You're like, I've got a naked Dreadnought on turn 2, but I know my opponent, has maybe 5 or 6 answers. Am I going to force check them, or do I have confidence in my late game that I can go full patience? And it's a really interesting puzzle to solve, and something that I think we'll have to save for future episodes of Spike Colony as the rain continues to batter this road wave. And I'm sure I'm going to hit the New York City border in roughly 30 minutes and have to focus a lot more on my driving. Really should be focused on it now too because of the rain. So I think we're gonna call it here. Any plugs from the car? Andy is unconscious. He's conscious.
One plug is Andy's consciousness.
Yeah.
Shout out to that.
As it comes in and out, yeah.
Sign up for the Sacred Torch Showdown. What date is that again?
July 19th.
Oh, thank
July
God.
19th. See, that's why, Andy's consciousness. July 19th. Sign up.
Sign up. The cap has been raised to 64. We are playing at Hex & Co. All the details can be found at mtgnyc.com. Absolute awesome tournament we're going to run. We want to keep the hype rolling for Lobstercon. We want to see some out-of-towners. We've got awesome swag and fun promotions that we're going to do. The Stamped Ravenous Rats are looking great.
$800 cash prize first place.
Yeah. $800 cash prize first place.
More money than a Guru Swamp.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you are right.
Even better than the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. So it goes $650 friends, and then $800. So
Yeah.
the friends are roughly $700.
In that range, friends fall in there.
I am going to work on this, but we are absolutely going to have a Ratatouille Altered Ravenous Rats awarded to the best brew of the tournament.
Guess I'm not playing time.
Yeah.
Man, you heard it here.
Because, like, I mean, how cool does that sound? So, this has been the road from LobsterCon back into New York City. Any last minute plugs? Thanks for plugging Sacred Torch. I completely forgot.
You said that you forgot it earlier, so I was like, you forgot it during the LobsterCon stream. So I was like, I'm not going to forget it during this podcast. I also want to give an obvious huge shout out to the Duress crew.
Yeah.
They put on an amazing event. All the opponents that I played from the Duress crew were not only very strong opponents, but also very nice. That's a combination that I really love.
Yeah, the vibes are, I mean, you're going to hear it over and over again, but these guys have the vibes absolutely right. I think that they are great stewards and ambassadors for the format. And honestly, so long as, obviously Jared and DFP still getting involved this year, but, Tree Modern is in great hands with these guys. And I can't see what they get up to either at the next quarterly, in the next year. Really, really awesome group of people, and people that I have really enjoyed getting to know as the years go by. Like each year, I'm kind of just like stoked to like just hang out and sort of have some brotherly bonding with the homies up in Worcester. So yeah, this is
and I just want to also just say, like, I was feeling this way. Maybe there's like the sentimental side coming out, but that's a big side of me as well. I was having this feeling when I was out with everyone. We went out to dinner after Friday, after the Friday vanilla event was kind of coming to an end, and it's just so great that, like, the basis of our friendship is primarily that we're all obsessed with this fucking game, right? That we love this game, and then that creates friendships. There's a lot of games that I've played that have not resulted in that. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like great that Magic, the gathering, the community, right? Yeah. Like,
there's something about it that brings people together.
Yeah, especially in like the best circumstances. Obviously, we've all been to a sweaty tournament where we've played mean players or whatever, and like we left with a bad taste in our mouth. But like, shout out to like the pre-modern community where that is at a minimum. I'm sure it's not non-existent, right? But like at a minimum, and it's just a blessing that we get to have so many great people in the community, and we get to make friends and like go to these events together and share these times and build these friendships. And again, like like you were saying, like these brotherly bonds, like as we age, sometimes it's hard to like make new friends and connect with new people, but like having like a great hobby that we're passionate about like this creates the that social glue, you know what I mean, to create these bonds.
Making friends as an adult is hard.
It really is. It's a different, you want to talk about a weird meta?
Yeah.
Adult friendship is a weird meta. And so, I'm grateful to everyone in the car, everyone we shared in the house, everyone from the New York crew that went out, all the people that I met this weekend. And yeah, what a great weekend. What a great format. What a great game.
Yeah, also shout out to Jay and the people in the booth letting some washed New Yorkers crash the booth for a few rounds. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I just hope next year I hope I do well, but if I don't, I'm hoping for some blue mirrors on stream.
Yeah,
there we go.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. Love Spike Colony.
Game over.